Yes, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. I hope you had a very enjoyable lunch. Thank you very much for joining us today. I propose that we start, and I will begin by introducing myself. My name is Michaela Bitsakis. I'm a head of sector in the unit dealing with doctoral networks, and I will have the pleasure of chairing this event today. But before diving into the program, we will start with two welcome addresses. And for the first welcome address, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Stefan Herman. Oops, sorry, I will need my next slide, which is not working forever. It's overheated, yes, something. Well, I'm very sorry about that. I need to fix this little issue before. Well, I'll give you the floor, so please, sorry. Yes, indeed. So I will give the floor to Stefan Hermans, who is actually the director in DG Education and Culture, in charge of international competitiveness, talent mobility, and international cooperation. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. I guess I need to start today with a disclosure, and maybe maybe a disclaimer as well at the same time, I don't know, but for you to judge at the end of the day. You see Vanessa here, you see Graham here, you see Sohel there. So we're all a little bit from the same generation who, in one way or another, already 10, 15 years ago, were connected to the MSCA world. Vanessa, Graham, I remember them vividly as those who were actually doing it in the program. Sohel and myself, we were the ones who talked about it on the policy side. As so many of you know in this community, once you have ever touched base with the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions, you're always bound to come back. And you don't have to do any effort for that. It just happens spontaneously, automatically. It's as if you're pulled into it, okay? So therefore, first, a disclosure and maybe a disclaimer for those who may believe that we are kind of a sect. We actually are not, okay? We are just very much committed to the work that we are doing. So let me thank wholeheartedly the team from Vanessa here, the entire team working on the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions for bringing us together, but not just for today, I think also for the outstanding work that they do, that you do every single day with this community. And my thanks also go to the entire community, because Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions, yeah, it's a European program, sure. The Commission loves to take credit when something is great, sure, and we should, by the way, okay? But at the same time, we all know very well that when you speak on an action like this, it involves so many different parties, organizations, individuals, commitment throughout, from the member states, the political and the policy side, but also from those who are involved in the national funding schemes and the expertise that they have been bringing in, because we all know very well that if you see great examples somewhere, why not copy it, right? Okay, so we certainly have been taking advantage of that. But also, when you think about all of you working in national contact points, people who do their best within the program committee to really support the activity and to ensure that we deliver the best we possibly can. The European stakeholders, without their support, I think we would have never been able to grow to what the actions are today. And we still continue to count on you at the moment that we're actually preparing now for the next MFF and the budget allocation. For the research organizations, for the universities, and not to forget all the staff, academic, administrative, within research organizations and universities, who actually also make sure that these programs work and that they function very well. And what we are doing, it's not just investing in research and research career. Remember that one of the great values that we stand for as Europeans is that we do fundamentally believe in the freedom of research, right? That you can be free to choose what you work on, that there is room, and lots of room, for so-called bottom-up research. And that actually really has to be treasured. But we also know that when you come in a program like this, you're very strongly encouraged to take initiative, to be entrepreneurial, not just to wait and see, but really take action. So that's also a very important virtue and value that we have in this program. And on top of that, and maybe that's one of the structuring elements that is the most important of this program, is the long-lasting impact it has on doctoral training and on the way research organizations, universities have been organizing themselves. Think, for instance, about the doctoral schools. I know grudgingly some young researcher will tell you that they don't like all of it all the time. I have some at home like that, okay? And they complain and they blame. But I think at the end of the day, what we really have been trying to do is to try to make sure that research is fundamentally embedded into our economic development. And that therefore you really genuinely need it when it comes from the pure research side in research organizations, in universities, but clearly also in the connection with the broader economy, whether it's in the private industry, whether it's in public or semi-public organizations, that what we're actually preparing young people to do is that they can bring a very strong research dimension within the work that they are doing, because we do know that that is what drives innovation. That is what drives, at the end of the day, prosperity. And we know that the research intensity that you have within your economy is a very strong indicator from your level of prosperity that you actually have, and a prosperity as Europeans that we love to share with everyone. So today you have joined here together in what bureaucratically is called a feedback to policy exercise. We know we need those kind of labels to be able to justify certain things, but there is value in it as well. It is not just for ticking the box that we do this. There is value in it because clearly one does want to know what you get for your money, right? And certainly in a bottom-up approach, which you do know very well, some people love to challenge, and they say, wouldn't it be better that politicians or bureaucrats would determine what you would be researching? That maybe you can also look at it, what can you as a policymaker or politician actually get out of the research that helps us to understand our society better, and also can clearly help us to set a cursor for future development. That also means that in terms of thematic approach, that a feedback to policy exercise that we are committed to as an institution, that is actually extremely valuable. And even more so, I think, within this particular case, because it goes beyond what we do thematically, but it clearly, once again, on this long-lasting impact that the program has on the way we basically shape and we implement European policy. When you think of the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions, the famous 3 I's are apparently still around on the intersectoral, the interdisciplinary, and the international. And they are there for a very good reason, right? They are really there because that is the foundation, that is the strength on which to build. With the quality of training, with respect for good working conditions. Okay? It is not acceptable that when you have a research career that you cannot build up social rights. I mean, you should be entitled when you work to build up rights just like everybody else. And the program has been a trendsetter for that and remains to do so. Also when it comes to career prospects. And most importantly, and I just want to repeat it again, on the way it has been impacting universities, research organizations, and certainly also the way funding organizations have been thinking about research careers. Now, coming back also on those elements and the relationship with the politics, what we clearly also see here is that the deepening of a European research area is a genuine strong feature for strengthening the competitiveness within the European Union. I'm not going to start a long expose on the Draghi report, but I do want to say one thing about the Letta report, and that is, I think me, like probably all of you here in this room, we were actually delighted to see that the idea of the fifth freedom was being resurrected after more than a decade, and actually the idea of the importance of the freedom for research, the freedom of knowledge, and actually that to be shared and passed over the borders. So that's one element I think that we very much welcome also to see coming back to the forefront. I also want to zoom in related to this competitiveness argument and what the European research area can mean when we think about the steps that have been taken in the past already and continue to be deployed right now and will continue also to be deployed in the future, is that it is once again, we are focusing on research, both for academia, but also for the private sector or for public, semi-public organizations. So in other words, that there is space for non-academic organizations to have a role, for instance, within the doctoral networks, in the consortia there. The value that you have of the secondment that you can have for fellows within such organizations, and very importantly, and connecting once again to the whole logic of the doctoral schools, the importance of transferable skills, okay? It breaks my heart when I read in the newspaper that when you have young researchers who have a hard time finding a job because there are still employers out there who think that when you've been working on a PhD, that the only thing you have been doing is sitting either in your attic or your basement typing for 4 years by yourself. I mean, it's mad when you think about it. And I think we also have a duty still there to convince people within the private sector that actually working on a doctorate is a lot more than just the research and working it out. There's a lot of teamwork involved. There's a lot of other activity that is involved, which then typically those people who complain they can't find the right people actually say this is what they're looking for, but they have it in front of them. But maybe it's also part of our task still to get that message across. I want to stop on with 2 items, and that is colleagues in RTD in particular are working very intensively on the preparation of the ERA Act. It's also a culmination, I think, of more than a decade and a half of work and thought that has gone into what we can do of constructing this European research area with a very strong focus also on the research careers, the free circulation of researchers and knowledge. Thank you, Mr. Letta. Very much appreciate for your support on that, but also on the valorization of research output, and once again, on everything to do with working conditions and the creation around that. The second point that I want to bring as a way of conclusion is related to the next framework program. So work will continue to go on for the negotiations. And together, I think we hope, and together, I hope we can also continue to make the case that it actually does pay off, that there is a very high leverage effect for every euro spent in research careers, for our economy, for our society as a whole, for what we want to stand for as Europeans. So for that, I think for all of you from different organizations, nationally, European-wide, whether you're related to the government or not, very wholeheartedly thanks for your continuous support, of which we're also sure that you will continue to make the argument. So you will hear about the study, and the goal, of course, is that we have open and sincere discussions. I'm sure that what we have had so far, that it will also continue today. And I didn't read the study, I confess, but I've been told that actually the program is a model for many other programs you potentially can think of, but who would have been surprised by that? But it's good to actually know that and get to the message across. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure for being only a couple of minutes with you. Unfortunately, I have to leave. I cannot stay any longer with you, but I certainly didn't want to miss up the opportunity for the very first time in my new role to come to you. I think a group that we love to work so dearly with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stefan. So for the second welcome address, I have the pleasure to give the floor to Vanessa Debier-Santon, who is the head of department in the Research Executive Agency in charge of the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions and the support to experts.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michaela. So yes, I am another example of once MSCA, always MSCA. And I am very pleased to welcome Luca Perego, who is Luca, he has left, in this MSCA community. Luca, I was welcoming you to the MSCA community, and you will see very soon you will fall in love with this community. So Yes, of course. Building on what he just said, Stefan, competitiveness. So indeed, we need Europe to be competitive. It's the currently money for geopolitics and strategies. And for that, we need a strong researchers pipeline. And how do we start a research career? We start it with a PhD. So that is very, very important. In Europe, we need a higher pipeline of researchers with higher numbers, but also higher quality. And we have a European flagship when it comes to doctoral training, and that is MSCA Doctoral Networks. Well, it was research training networks, then initial training networks, and now it has become doctoral networks. So more and better. We have many examples about fantastic stories of MSc doctoral candidates. I met, for example, 2 weeks ago, Anna Charisma, who did a PhD at Oxford, then did an internship at CERN, and now she's the CEO of the first company in quantum physics in Poland. Fantastic story. But now at this time of the year, in the context of the next MFF, we need more than stories. We need evidence, strong evidence. And this is the power of that study, thanks to Klaus and his team, Michaela, Malloy, Shana, and Audrey, big applause to them, who did this very robust study. Yes, you can. So robust in terms of numbers of respondents, more than 6,800 respondents from researchers, both beneficiaries of MSCA and non-beneficiaries, which is very important to be able to compare the added value of MSCA as compared to others. And coming back to Anna Charisma that I mentioned before, what we discovered, just a little preview and teaser of what the colleagues will present later on, is that MSCA doctoral candidates are 3.5 times, they have 3.5 times higher chances to develop their career in the private sector, which is good actually, because this is where most of the opportunities for researchers are, and we need researchers to innovate. So that is very good to have this very strong evidence, but that's not all. That's not all. Stefan mentioned the III. That is very important. International, of course, but also interdisciplinary, because there is no single challenge that can be solved by only one discipline. So we need researchers from different disciplines to collaborate together. And here again, I will not say the number, but Michaela will tell you more about the evidence that we get. But it's not only about the researchers, it's also about the supervisors. For example, what we learn is that 8 in 10 supervisors tell us that they would have never developed that research. They would have never been able to progress their research without MSCA DN budget. And I met one of them 3 weeks ago in Sweden, and we have our colleague from Sweden there. Yes, here you are. Welcome. And a fantastic event organized by the Swedish National Contact Point and National Research Council for the 30th anniversary of MSCA. And here there was a fantastic MSCA beneficiary who told us after her first postdoc, it was very difficult. And we know many researchers after their first postdoc, how difficult it is. And she was hesitating whether she would continue or not. And it's thanks to an MSCA RTN at this time, so the previous doctoral network, that it really reboosted her research career, thanks to the collaboration, which is unique to this doctoral training. And 16 years later, she won the Nobel Prize in Physics, and her name is Anne Riley. So I think it's a very strong example as well of what MSCA DN doctoral network can lead to. But we should not be only self-complacent. We have also room for improvement when it comes to increase the visibility of the program and its attractiveness, including from widening countries. We need as well to strengthen, and Stefan mentioned before, the alignment between MSCA and the fantastic working conditions and fair recruitment with national doctoral program frameworks. We always need to simplify and be more flexible. And we need to increase the attractiveness of industrial doctorates as well. And that is what we have proposed to discuss with all of you tomorrow morning in different workshops. And the outcomes will feed into the final report of that study. So you are all part of that study. So you will be our best ambassadors to promote the outcomes of that study afterwards. And as Stefan said before, this is the right timing as we are negotiating the next MFF, shaping the next MFF, but also advocating for more budget. So that is the opportunity for you. We give you the evidence to help support advocating for more budget for MSCA for the benefit of more researchers. So thank you very much to all of you. And without further ado, back to you, Michaela.
So thank you very much, Vanessa. Thank you very much for also setting the theme of this event today. But there's one element which is important, which we didn't mention yet. It's the 30th anniversary of the program. And as you can see, we have a lot of banners to celebrate it. And this year is it takes place at a particularly meaningful moment since 2026 marks the 30th anniversary. And so to walk you through this important milestone, I'm very pleased to welcome our next speaker, who is Graham Wilkie, who is the head of unit in the Research Executive Agency, in charge of Citizens, Co-Fund, and Choose Europe.
Hello, okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends. As you heard from Michaela, my name's Graham Wilkie. I'm one of the 4 MSCA heads of unit here in REA. And just ahead of you getting to the actual meat of the afternoon, give me 10 minutes because I want to talk about this anniversary that we're celebrating. It's my pleasure, and it's a very personal one, to speak today as we celebrate 30 years since the European Union's research flagship program was named after Marie Skłodowska-Curie. So, no, don't clap. So, thank you, Carola. Is Carola in the room? Yes, she chose this picture. I should confess something from the beginning. So I have a long and slightly emotional relationship with this program. So this picture is me in 1996. It's the year I first became involved in the program, and I was the UK National Contact Point and program committee member. And the timing, 1996, was interesting because at the time, I'd only just finished being an EU-funded postdoc myself. And suddenly I'm confronted with young researchers contacting me, asking about their career prospects, their funding, their mobility, their future. I understood them completely. In fact, I was only about a year ahead of them and not entirely sure in this photo that I'd escaped. I understood the anxieties about temporary contracts and job insecurity and the difficulties of getting a tenured position. I also felt a little bit of a fraud giving out advice to people my own age. And the slide's a lie. This haircut was never trendy. So that was 1996, and the program was already 6 years old. It started in 1990, and it was called the Human Capital and Mobility Program. Now, I'm sure the policymakers who invented that name meant well, but let's be honest, human capital and mobility sounds less like an inspiring research program and more like something that sounds when economists are left alone too long with a whiteboard. It's a perfectly respectable name, but it doesn't exactly make a young scientist scream, yes, I will move across Europe and dedicate my life to discovery. So fortunately, in 1996, the then French Commissioner for Research, Edith Cresson, had a much better idea. She decided to name the fellowships after one of the most inspiring scientists in history, Marie Skłodowska-Curie. And suddenly, the program had a name that meant something, a name associated with curiosity, courage, and above all, scientific excellence. Also, let's be honest, a name that sounded dramatically better on your CV. Marie Curie's life perfectly captures what this program is about. She was a Polish scientist, as you know, who moved to France to pursue her research. She crossed borders. She collaborated internationally. She challenged conventions, not easy being a woman physicist 130 years ago. And she made discoveries that changed the world. And her story reminds us that mobility is not just about movement, it's opportunity. So the opportunity that led to Marie Curie being the first woman to get a Nobel Prize in physics, not the easiest one, in December 1903 at the age of 36, no pressure for the young researchers, only 6 months after getting her PhD from the University of Paris. An opportunity which would see her getting a second Nobel Prize in chemistry in 1911. And to date, she remains the only scientist of any gender to get a Nobel Prize in 2 different scientific fields. So to all the men in DGRTD in 1996 who suggested that the program be called Einstein Fellowships or Edison Fellowships, I hope we can agree that Marie Curie was an inspired choice for the name of our program. So what's happened in the last 3 decades? I love a statistic, by the way. So our program has supported more than 150,000 researchers, 42% of them women, and 40% of them from outside the EU. In fact, our funded researchers come from more than 130 countries worldwide. In addition, and Stefan and Vanessa mentioned it, we have supported almost 10,000 research active companies, belying perhaps our reputation as an academic program. Marie Curie is and always has been the most international and inclusive part of the framework program, of which we're immensely proud. And what might have been hubris to name the program after one of the most successful researchers who ever lived turned out to be prophetic. We have directly funded 23 Nobel laureates over the past few decades, and that alone is an important reminder of why we are in the excellent science pillar of the framework program. But statistics only tell part of the story, because what the program really changes is people's lives, mine own included. So for me, the program has never been a policy instrument or a set of funding schemes. It has been part of my professional life for 3 decades. It's literally bookended my entire career. When I started as the NCP in 1996, I worked directly with researchers applying for fellowships. I encouraged them to be ambitious. I explained the rules. And occasionally I had to reassure them that yes, the application form really was that long for everyone. Over the years, I watched the program grow. The PhD candidates and postdocs I met at midterm reviews in the 1990s have become group leaders, professors, innovators, entrepreneurs, and occasionally and wonderfully, my colleagues here in REA. I saw collaborations form between universities, industry, and research institutes across Europe and around the world. And what struck me most was the sense of community. Not just excellent science, but a shared belief in openness, curiosity, and collaboration. So why does mobility matter? Well, mobility, always coupled with cutting-edge research, remains the beating heart of the program. Because science advances when ideas travel. When researchers move between countries and disciplines, they bring new methods, new perspectives, and new questions. They challenge each other, they inspire each other, and occasionally they discover that another research group has already solved the problem they've been working on for 3 years, which is painful, but extremely efficient for science. We are too small, even though we're more than 500 million people in the Horizon Europe countries, to be duplicating funding at a national scale. And I can't emphasize enough that the best research must be collaborative, not competitive. We should all be immensely proud that our daily work is to bring people together. The motto of the European Union is United in Diversity, and it applies at so many levels to our beloved program. So continuing on the theme of collaboration, let's look forward. Vanessa already said this, we should be honest enough to admit that the challenges ahead are enormous. Climate change today, digital transformation, global health, sustainable energy, AI. These problems are too complex for any country or any single research discipline to solve alone. They require collaborations across borders, across sectors, and across generations of researchers. And this is exactly what the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions are designed to support. But, as Stefan mentioned and Vanessa, the fight to make research careers attractive is not easily won. We have to work together to fight precarity, to offer a quality social model, and to ensure genuine career opportunities. The Commission cannot do this alone. It's a shared endeavour with the member states. And if we can do this together, then the next 30 years of the programme will live up to the promise of the first 30 years, and Europe's future will get a lot brighter. So Stefan also wanted to thank the people. And finally, it would be remiss of me not to recognise the people who make this programme work. First, last, and always, the researchers whose curiosity drives discovery, and the supervisors and the mentors who guide the next generation, the institutions that welcome talent from more than 130 countries worldwide, often against the wishes of their national immigration departments. We thank you. Let's not forget the program managers and administrators who coordinate the 6,000 running MSCA projects at any one time. And they do this with extraordinary patience, heroic diplomacy, and an impressive ability to process budget spreadsheets that most of us would run screaming away from. Last, but certainly not least, this room, I want to recognise the NCPs, the programme committee members, and other policymakers who continue to invest in science and to advocate for a European future built on reason, on evidence, and around people. Let me close with my favourite quote from Marie Skłodowska-Curie, who once said, "Nothing in life is to be feared, it's only to be understood." And for more than 30 years, the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions have helped researchers do exactly that, to understand more, to discover more, and to share knowledge across borders. For me personally, it's been a privilege and truly one of the joys of my career to be connected to this programme for so long. And I suspect many people in this room feel exactly the same way. Thank you, and enjoy the fabulous work of my Doctoral Network colleagues this afternoon. You're in for a treat.
So thank you very much for this very inspiring presentation, and also for reminding us of the incredible journey of the program over the past 30 years. So building on that broader perspective, we will now actually move to the next point of the agenda, the point where the reason why you're all here. So we will actually present you with the findings of the study which we carried out on the added value of MSCA Doctorates. And I will be presenting the findings together with my colleague Molloy Vera. But before we start, I would like you to pitch a little bit the study, even though Vanessa already did it. So as many of you know, MSCA is considered as a flagship training program for doctoral education. But while its reputation is really well established, we had very limited evidence up to now to quantify what makes the MSCA experience different from other doctoral training programs. And this is where the study comes in. It was designed to specifically address that question. Now, MSCA is also often regarded as a benchmark for excellence. But what does excellence mean in practice? So the study which we'll be presenting today will provide you with very clear answers and also evidence-based answers. And we will demonstrate that the doctoral networks, they don't only deliver on excellence, but they take the doctoral programs to the next level. And this is very important. So what we did is that we compared the experiences of MSCA fellows and supervisors with those not involved in MSCA programs. And we came to, based on the evidence collected, to the conclusion that the MSCA doctoral networks outperform in quite a lot of areas the doctoral and traditional training programs. But enough pitching, let's let the numbers talk. So what we found out is that a little bit more than 9 out of 10 participants agreed to the doctoral network's added value. And of course, numbers only tell one part of the story. Participants' own world tell the rest of the story. And as you can see in this word cloud, there are a number of terms which appear more frequently than others. We have networking, we have funding opportunities, international mobility, interdisciplinarity. We also have excellent research, very important, and prestige. And those are exactly the terms which are used by the participants when they refer to the added value of MSCA doctorates. Now, as the data will show in a few moments, the added value of the MSCA doctoral networks is reflected across each step of the doctoral journey. So the participants in the survey reported higher training satisfaction, better working conditions, a higher III mobility, and we have already mentioned what the III mobility is, intersectoral and interdisciplinary exposure. And because of this higher triple mobility, participants also reported more networking opportunities and finally, better career perspectives, not only in academia, but also, as we said before, in the non-academic sector and in industry. So this is quite important. Now, I've pitched a little bit the study, but let me talk a little bit about the study itself, because I think understanding who participated and the breadth of the data collected will actually help us put a little bit the findings into context and demonstrate also the robustness of the data collected. So we actually used a mixed methods approach in order to assess the added value. So we started with a comprehensive literature review, followed by a limited number of qualitative interviews, but then we launched a large-scale quantitative survey. And our target population were MSCA and non-MSCA researchers and supervisors. And in order to have a solid evidence base, we sent nearly 58,000 invitations to participate to the survey. And we received nearly 6,800 replies, which is actually quite a lot, and from all over the world. So 76% from the respondents came from the MSCA community, and 24% were non-MSCA respondents. And while actually the percentage might seem low, it was actually quite high to allow us to have a solid comparative analysis. Now, as I said before, we actually received replies from all over the world, and you can see it in the map. Of course, the concentration of replies is higher in Europe, which actually makes sense since we're talking about a European doctoral program. But we were nevertheless able to collect experiences and perspectives from a much broader international community. And now let me give you the 5 areas which we chose. And those 5 areas which we chose to assess the added value of MSCA are of course at the heart of the program. And so we assessed the added value with regards to the III mobility, to supervision and training, social innovation and working environment, career perspectives and networking opportunities, and finally, the broader structuring effect of the program on doctoral education in Europe. So I have given you a bit of information, but now for the details of the findings, I will give the floor to Molloy.
Thank you, Michaela, for introducing the study so well. So now I will move on to what we found about the study, about the program, about the doctoral networks. What are the added values of the program and what are the impacts, and what are the challenges that still need to be tackled? To start with, Michaela already introduced some of the key areas that we focused on. So I will start with the III mobility. And for a moment, we need to pause at the word mobility. Because if you remember, if you know about the doctoral networks already, you would know that the doctoral networks is inherently a mobility-based program. So every single fellow has to move from their country of residence to another one. So we know that the program allows mobility in the geographic sense. But when we think about mobility from the perspective of the Marie Skłodowska-Curie doctoral networks, mobility is not simply about geographic mobility, but also about moving across sectors, across disciplines, and across, of course, national borders. So why is it important to have III mobility in a doctoral fellow's career, in their training? So from this study, we found that III mobility has very high impact in several areas, and it prepares them for the future, for what lies ahead. Because after all, why is one doing a PhD? I did mine to get a job, by the way. And so III mobility has demonstrated in our study that it has very high impact in industry exposure, in IPR strategy, which is intellectual property rights, economic impact, innovation and entrepreneurship, sustainability and environmental impact, and of course, knowledge of the market, which is one of the most important things one of the doctoral fellows should be learning about once they're getting out into the world and being overwhelmed by everything that's out there. Now, how does this impact come into fruition? Where does it come from? We focused on every single area, every single component of the III mobility, starting from international, and I will walk you through them one by one. To start with the international collaborations. Of course, once again, the word here we used is collaborations because international mobility is inherent in the program. So every single fellow is moving to another country and getting international experience. But we also wanted to understand, to focus on, do they collaborate as well while based in another country, across countries, across the network? And we see that 9 out of 10 MSCA fellows collaborate internationally, which is 17% higher compared to non-MSCA. And it's the same for MSCA supervisors. MSCA supervisors also get to collaborate internationally more, given the network component compared to the non-MSCA. The next is intersectoral mobility, which is very important. I will come back to it later. Vanessa has already mentioned about future opportunities, so we'll come back to that later. But even if you look at the data, you'll see that, again, 9 out of 10 MSCA fellows get intersectoral opportunities during the course of their PhD, which is 59% higher than non-MSCA. And it's important because of various reasons. Once again, I'm keeping it reserved, and we will come back to it. Interdisciplinary mobility. As all the speakers before me have already pointed out, the challenges that we face in the world today, it's not possible to solve alone from one discipline or one funding program or one university. So we need to move across borders, across sectors, and across disciplines. And we see that interdisciplinarity is also very high amongst the MSCA PhDs. Now, does this III mobility have any direct impact on the skills that the fellows gain, that they develop during the course of the PhD? And we see that 9 out of 10 MSCA fellows gain more skills in collaborative skills, technical skills, networking skills, and 8 out of 10 MSCA fellows also gain higher social skills and intercultural skills. These are all very important to be prepared for the future, once again. But a PhD is not just about what the fellow does, but also what is provided to them, what is given to them, what kind of training they're receiving, and what kind of mentorship or supervision they're receiving. And that's why we also decided to focus on, to try to understand how is the supervision, how is the training, and what do the fellows experience during the course of their PhD. And we see that 20% more MSCA fellows do their PhD under the guidance of a supervisory team, and 15% more MSCA fellows compared to non-MSCA do their PhD under a supervisory agreement. And this agreement is very important because there has to be accountability. Who is your supervisor? Oral agreement is not enough. You need to be able to be held accountable. And supervisory team is important because that's where the interdisciplinary is also coming in from, because the more people, the more experts are there in your team, the more disciplinary background and the kind of expertise coming in to guide you, and you get a more holistic interdisciplinary training from your supervision experience during the PhD. And we also ask about the training satisfaction. Of course, there are many different kinds of training that the fellows receive, which we could not show everything in here, and we invite you to know more soon. We will send you more about the study. But to focus on some specific components on the satisfaction, and we see that 20% more MSCA fellows are more satisfied with the kind of training they receive for networking, of course, which is not a surprise because it's a doctoral network, and the network has a consortium with a whole big network of fellows and scholars and researchers and supervisors who are coming in. And 11% higher satisfaction with public speaking and teamwork and ethical awareness, and 7% higher satisfaction with training for interdisciplinary thinking, technical proficiency, and intersectoral knowledge transfer. And intersectorality, as you can see, it keeps coming back and every now and then. And also, in what conditions do they do this research? In the beginning of the program, you already heard about, it has been mentioned many times, because everybody wants to be supported. Research cannot be done alone. I cannot do it. None of the researchers, any of you who are all present here, you cannot do it without the funding that comes from the program. But how is the funding? Do you feel like it's enough? That's why we focused, okay, first of all, the working conditions. Employment contract is something that the MSCA Doctoral Networks has been pushing for. And we know from our internal databases as well, it is verified that all MSCA fellows receive an employment contract for their PhD and social security. But that's why we wanted to understand, where does the non-MSCA stand in that situation? And we see that the MSCA is actually 57% ahead of the non-MSCA in terms of employment contract, in the sense that 57% more MSCA fellows are recruited with an employment contract, and 23% more MSCA fellows are recruited with a social security compared to the non-MSCA. And of course, this is one of the most important things, salary. A fellow needs to be supported by their salary, because it's not just about cost of living, but life, because we are already treating the fellows as researchers who are not just students, but we are preparing them to be independent in the future. So at this career stage, we expect them to be able to say that, yes, we have a comfortable style of living with the salary that we have. And we see that 8 out of 10 MSCA fellows agree that the salary they receive is largely or very largely sufficient, which is 33% higher than the non-MSCAs can say. Of course, there were some concerns regarding the salary being at a different stage. That is something that a future study will already tackle from DGEAC, but these are very few. And that is already known to us, in which case the countries already top up with the local funding, with the national funding. But the MSCA provides funding not just for the fellows, but also for the whole network. And in that case, we also wanted to know the budget that is given to the project. Is it enough for research, for training, for mobility, for all other purposes other than the fellow's salary? And we asked this question to the supervisors. And 7 out of 10 MSCA supervisors agree that the budget they have for all other activities is very largely sufficient. And it is also already 39% higher than the non-MSCA can say. And of course, what is the impact of this? Do we already have an idea if this is actually making an impact to the extent that that it is indispensable? And yes, we see that 8 out of 10 MSCA supervisors and PIs say that they could not have conducted this kind of network-based, large-scale collaborative research without the doctoral networks funding. And now we move on to what every research fellow, every doctoral fellow wants to know: what after this? Yes, we do a PhD, but do we get a job? This is also something that we focused on, and we found that MSCA Doctoral Networks helps or provides accelerated employment. And actually, 9 out of 10 MSCA fellows find a job within a year of their employment, which is 12% more than the non-MSCA. And the MSCA Doctoral Networks, we also offer broader career opportunities. This is the point that we have been coming back to every now and then. And we see that while 90% of the non-MSCA fellows remain within academia after their PhD, 3.5 times more MSCA fellows actually branch out. And it's important because as a 2024 study by CSER also notes that nowadays, more and more research funding opportunities are lying in non-academic sectors beyond the academia. And it's important that the MSCA, that the doctoral networks are preparing the fellows to branch out after the PhD, to have more opportunities and not just limited, because the academia is not the only place where you can do research. You can also do excellent research in industry, in hospitals, in museums, in NGOs, in many different non-academic sectors, and help with solving the problems of the world. And so we also wanted to understand the kind of training that is given to the fellows. Is it limiting them to remain in their core area of training? It turns out that 1/4 of the Doctoral Networks fellows after their PhD feel comfortable enough to venture out of their core area of training, all thanks to the kinds of mobility, the exposure, the networking, and the other skills that they developed during their training and their whole research career experience. And of course, these are all about the individuals, the universities, the fellows, the researchers. But now, does the program have any structuring effect on the universities, on the institutions? And that's why we asked a question. Did the program, or have you noticed an increase of harmonization and standardization of doctoral program requirements in the past decade? This question was asked to the supervisors, to the PIs. And we see that the statistics for the MSCA and the non-MSCA is quite close. And it's actually because the question was about the last decade, but the MSCA has been running for 30 years. And the structuring effect can be seen in the level of pulling up each other and the level of compliance and the level of equality and the level of coming together of the research framework in Europe, which is, of course, more things that we need to work on. And we will come back to that soon. But despite the structuring effects, and despite the kind of impact, the kind of structuring effect of the Marie Curie program on non-MSCA, we also still wanted to understand, are there still any strengths of the program compared to the non-MSCA, the kind of doctoral programs that exist? And we see that 9 out of 10 MSCA participants, including those with MSCA experience and those without MSCA experience, agree that the strength of the MSCA lies in networking opportunities, in the III mobility, in the secondments, the interdisciplinary and intersectoral supervision, and of course, 8 out of 10 participants also agreed that career development. We also wanted to see what are the main attractiveness of the program. And from the study, we see that, first of all, III mobility, something that we very much support and have been trying to push forth. And networking opportunities, of course, it's no surprise because it's a doctoral network and the network is at the core of it. And the funding and the resources, because the salary, as we talked about, and the budget for other kinds of activities is very high. And the prestige of the funding program is another attractiveness, because a Marie Curie funding name on your CV is not a small thing. And the EU dimension also adds more prestige to the attractiveness of the ITN and the DN. Now, in addition to the added values, the impacts on the positive dimensions, we also, such a big, large-scale project cannot run without its challenges. So you also wanted to understand what are the challenges. And we identified a few of them. For instance, 8 out of 10 MSCA fellows considered that the length of funding is a challenge because it's for 3 years. And whereas most universities in Europe have a 4-year PhD program structure. So after the end of the 3 years of funding, they need to look for alternative source. So that is a challenge that the fellows face. But something that we need to ponder on a bit more is that 6 out of 10 non-MSCA participants, non-MSCA fellows, were unaware about the existence of the Marie Curie doctoral networks. And this is something that we need to think about. But in terms of other challenges that the fellows face, we see that the MSCA fellows face fewer challenges in funding, in career uncertainty, in work-life balance. This has already been demonstrated. So of course they face fewer challenges in this, but they also face higher challenges in research activities and administrative burden, language barrier, research direction. And this is because, once again, if we go back to the previous challenges that we were talking about, that the funding is for 3 years, and the 4th year they need to look for something. And so that also adds to the administrative burden. And this is something that we need to think about also in the future. But we also wanted to think about the supervisors, because ultimately a PhD fellow cannot do a PhD under the Marie Curie Doctoral Networks if PIs and supervisors do not apply for a project and secure the funding and then hire them. So we wanted to see why, because we also saw that many non-MSc supervisors have not considered applying for DN. So why is it that they haven't? And it turns out that, okay, a big number of them were unaware of the existence of the doctoral networks. Of course, we all know that the Marie Curie program as a whole is not invisible. The postdoctoral fellowship is something that many or most of us already know about, but the doctoral networks is something that despite its demonstrated evidence of its impact, we need to make more visible. Other problems that the supervisors think that deter them from applying are complex program requirements, the complex application process, and the low success rates. But the added values and the impacts that we have shown already shows that despite these hindrances, these challenges, we should encourage more and more MSCA supervisors and PIs to apply for the DN funding and come forth with new and innovative projects to be funded to tackle on the challenges of the world. Now, there's more things to say about what the study says, about recommendations, about what comes ahead. So I will invite Michaela back to the stage to take that on. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Molloy, for presenting all the in detail all the findings. It was not an easy exercise. I mean, there are a lot of statistics. I hope actually you enjoyed the presentation. I very much did, because it really demonstrated the added value of the program, and this is quite amazing. Of course, the study, as Molloy said before, identified a number of challenges. Vanessa also mentioned them before. And of course, there are always opportunities for further improvement. And from the study, there are 4 main recommendations which we actually wanted to work on. The first one, of course, is to address the issue of the lack of awareness. And this is actually a very big percentage. 62% don't know about the program. It's really, I was shocked when I found out. So I think we really need to work on the attractiveness and the visibility of the program. The second issue is related to the increase of the duration of the funding. And this is something, and I'm very happy to let you know, and you will hear it a bit later on, that we are already thinking about implementing it in the next framework program. The third one is related to administrative simplification. And this is not only in the evaluation proposal submission, but also when you actually manage a Marie Curie Doctoral Networks program. So we will also try to see how we can simplify this. And finally, we need to further align the program with doctoral programs in the European education and research area. So those are actually the main recommendations, but recommendations are of course only the beginning. And this is the reason why tomorrow, and this is already mentioned by Vanessa, we wanted to organize interactive workshops with you, because what we want to do is really to discuss the findings of the study with you, gather your feedback, and explore together how we can take those recommendations further and shape the future of doctoral networks. So what we have done, as you can see here, is that we have organized 4 thematic workshops. They are based on 3 out of 4 recommendations, because as I said before, we're already thinking of increasing the funding and the duration, so no workshop was needed for that. But there is another issue which we are facing, which is actually a very low participation in industrial doctorates. So we thought, okay, this is a great opportunity to involve you and to discuss how we can actually improve the attractiveness and the robustness of industrial doctorates. So those are the 4 thematic workshops. And because we're very nice people, we wanted to give you the opportunity to also select the workshops in which you want to participate. So for that, we have actually created a little survey in Slido. I invite you to scan the QR code, which appears here. You have also all received a tote bag. In the tote bag, here there is a booklet. In the booklet, you also have the QR code. And you also have a booklet which we have created for the workshops tomorrow, where for each workshop, we have actually set the scene with all the numbers and the data from the study, which explain what the issue is, as well as a number of questions we would like to address with you. So this will normally help you select the workshop the best way possible. So once you connect in the Slido, please actually rank all 4 workshops in your order of preference, and please use full names, because if you use a nickname, we won't be able to allocate you to the right workshop. So very important. Yes, what else? Yes, what I want also to tell you is, of course, I mean, if you all select the same workshop, we might not be able to accommodate all your wishes. But I want you to be reassured, because during the plenary session, where we will actually present you with the actionable guidance, which will be the result of the discussions in the workshops, you will be given the opportunity to express your ideas on all the 4 thematics which we want to discuss with you. So we have now reached the end of the presentation, but before opening the floor to questions, I wanted to actually invite my colleagues who participated in the study to join me on stage, because in addition to Molloy and myself, 8 other colleagues tirelessly worked over the study over the past 2 years. So it was a lot of work, and I invite you to give them a well-deserved round of applause, and they will present themselves and help us answer questions.
Working. Okay, so thanks a lot, and thanks a lot, Michaela and Molloy, for this fantastic presentation. It gives you a really good overview of the study, but I really also invite you to read the full study that is available now. Just to introduce myself, I'm Audrey Arfi, Head of Sector in the Doctoral Network unit in REA, and I was very happy also to be part of this second study of the unit.
Okay. Yes, thank you for the nice presentation. I can tell you that what we got was very clear. So it was a little bit a challenge to extract some of the points, but we can already dig further if we go to another round of analysis. So I'm Laurence Marama. I'm one of the people of REA A1, so Doctoral Networks.
Good afternoon. I'm Teresa Cuartero. I also work in REA in the A1 unit, who is dealing with Doctoral Networks project. I'm project advisor, which means that I follow a portfolio of DN-funded projects in my daily job, and I had the pleasure to be part of the team in A1 carrying out the and the study on the added value. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Gergana Simeonova-Arina. I'm also working at the MSCA DN unit, and I was part of this amazing team. I want to congratulate all my colleagues for the excellent work and to thank so many of you who actually participated in the study. It was hard work, but it's excellent to see the fruits of our work today and to involve you in person in working with us tomorrow and contribute even further. Thank you so much.
Hello, and I'm Soy Luca. I work at the European Commission at the unit responsible for the MSCA. I handle the doctoral networks there. And I had the privilege to be adopted by the study team throughout the years. Actually, it was a couple of years at least. Huge work, and we tagged along throughout these years, with them, working more on substance and me cheating. Yeah. So thanks.
Thank you, Suhail. I'm very glad that you used the word adopted and not kidnapped. So So my name is Thomas Visikas. I used to be in the engineering panel and project advisor in Doctoral Networks until very recently. Now I moved to staff exchanges. So very happy to see this study coming all together. There is much more work starting more than 2 years ago with long literature reviews and many more to discuss. But the important thing is that you contribute to it, and actually we take these practices not as a competition with national programs, but actually as sharing of best practices.
I think actually we can start the session. Thank you very much, all of you, for presenting yourselves. And I think we can start with a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, I will come and give you the mic. And unfortunately, for those of you who are actually watching the event online, we cannot actually show the audience for GDPR issues because we didn't get a consent from everyone. So, yes.
Now, okay, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much, all of you, for the hard work. I think it was really necessary. So, I was a PhD student, Marie Curie, myself as well, and back in times. And now I'm working as a project manager in a Marie Curie Doctoral Network. I'm also participating in writing proposals for Marie Curie Doctoral Network. So I'm very related to this project. So that gave me the idea in with different groups, different perspectives. And the analysis of the data it wasn't easy. And I'm pretty sure the conclusions will help a lot. So thank you. My question is more about the future duration and for a next time for the PhD program. It's going to be months, a full year, or and also when it's going to be, or when you think could be implemented by the next program or next year? Thank you.
Yes, you hear me? Okay. Too bad, because I mean, the answer is that we don't know. So yeah, I mean, of course, the future is fiction. We are going to fantasize about it later in the day. But of course, I mean, we have ideas, and the good news is that we don't know. That is, there are ideas. We have stakeholders in the room, so which means that nothing is set in stone yet. But you know, I think let's say looking at the average duration of a doctoral period throughout Europe, let's say the highest, I would call it median, whatever. I mean, the percentage is 4.5 years. Right now with the Marie Curie, it's 3. So the rest, there's not much more to say. Yeah.
No more questions?
Me? Okay. Hello, I'm Jesus Rojo. I'm the Spanish National Contact Point. Thank you for the report, the study. I'm very curious about because of the dimension is international, because of the map. Are you going to analyze also the nationality of the fellows to think about, because it's open to any nationality? We are receiving many doctoral candidates from third countries. I'm really curious about if they stay in Europe, if they come back to the home countries, and if there is relation with the host institution in Europe. I'm very curious about this dimension. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. That's that question has come back to us many times, but unfortunately, due to GDPR reasons, we cannot keep personal information. So nationality is not something that we could focus on, but it was mostly based on country of residence. And in that case, it's a very different and complicated situation. But thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much. It's a really interesting study and we'll certainly use it further. I'm Tanja van Loon. I'm working at Brussels University, the Flemish part, the VUB. And before that, I used to be a researcher myself in industry, small and big industries. And so it's more a suggestion than really a question, but maybe reframing the question about the industrial doctorates. Do we need to increase the attractiveness of the industrial doctorates in order to achieve the aims? Because from what I see, the intersectorality does achieve the purpose and the aims. So I also don't have the answer, but maybe it's good to think about it in another way.
I will take that, but please contribute. For a few years, we were working on industrial doctorates with my colleague Sophia in A1, trying to see what makes them different. I must say the political priority is clearly there. There is no doubt. But what we found over time is that actually the good doctoral networks, they have industrial participation or non-academic participation. So it's a good question how we move to the future framework program and to the future of MSCA and what modes they will exist or not. But as Sohail will say, this is still under discussion. The more we promote non-academic participation, the better. There are good outcomes in this collaboration, in this intersectoral collaboration, and certainly very fruitful products of this collaboration that they are long-lasting. Now, whether we put a barrier that this entity has to recruit or has to second, the important thing is that we keep the substance of the participation and really the knowledge exchange and the collaboration that comes out of it.
I mean, I don't want to be a spoiler, but I will take this as a chance to advertise the next talk by my dear colleague Audrey. So where you're going to find, you know, at least two pieces of data, of evidence that somehow differentiates the industrial doctorates from the current standard doctoral networks, even though it has a very, very high intersectoral dimension, the standard one. So you see now every anticipation. Yeah, there you go.
Hello, hi, Isabel from the Swedish Research Council. I was interested in the structuring effects. That was a little bit surprising. And maybe you said this and I missed it, but were there any differences regarding the host organization of the supervisors, like non-academic sector versus academic sector, or did you see any differences in the structuring effect? Or?
We couldn't really focus on the background of the supervisor being academic or non-academic, but so we don't really have a comment on that at the moment. But do you have anything else to add?
No, maybe from the perspective of the respondents, I think it was also, but maybe difficult for them to reply to this question because we were asking only to supervisors or principal investigators. Maybe they didn't have a full overview of what the institution is doing. So that's why there might have been a slight bias here. So it's something that we should maybe assess differently.
Maybe it's the subject of another study. I think we can take one more question before we need to move on, unfortunately, to the next point of the agenda. So I don't know who actually raised the hand first.
Good afternoon. My name is Dionysios Panagiotopoulos. I am a PI in KU Leuven. Myself, I was a Marie Curie Fellow back in the day. I have a question regarding the attractiveness of the PhD in general. Do you have an idea if the attractiveness of getting and pursuing a PhD has remained in the same levels, has increased? Because I feel, and we feel from as an academic institution that that's something that we need to address. We see a lot of students preferring not to follow the option of a PhD, comparing to the past that the PhD was one of the most common choices of good students, at least. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a possibility, but in fact, the survey was sent to supervisors and to PhD students, whether they are during the PhD implementation or after their PhD. So we didn't reach the master students who could have said whether they want to continue in a PhD or not. So we didn't reach this population.
Maybe to complement, we also notice the same trends and kind of slight lack of attractiveness in the last years. It's something that we receive also as feedback from all our consortia. Also, it was not fully explicit in the survey, but this is definitely something that we will work on also as of tomorrow morning. So I really count on you to participate. Okay, one last.
Okay, I'll be very quick. Frédéric Pognard from the other Free University in Brussels, the French-speaking one. A technical question. When you say that the MSCA population is this much more likely to do this or that, who was your reference population statistically? When you say they are more likely to have an international career or more likely to, what was your reference population statistically? And then second, you mentioned it, there's also I was very happy to hear you mention the importance of motivating the professors or the researchers to actually submit projects. The success rate of Marie Curie is going down, down, down as the number of applications balloon. We all know there is an AI dimension to this ballooning, which is not just a Marie Curie, but a horizon question. How do you see this evolve? It's starting to affect the motivation of professors.
I can take the first one. So the reference point was the anonymous. So when we sent the survey, we reached out to around 58,000 people, and we also asked them to forward it to more people they know, people who are in research, those who are supervising or are PIs or are pursuing PhD or are in stages later than that. And based on that, we had both MSCA population and non-MSCA population. So that is our reference point, the non-MSCA people, which was around 1,500 people, including the supervisors and the PhDs. But I think for the second one, Sohail will take it.
Me? Okay, so it is an issue, but let's say that for doctoral networks, it's really much less, at least so far. Huh? For doctoral network, I mean, just to remind the audience the question about the oversubscription. So for doctoral networks, it's not yet a thing, but however, the low success rate has been chronic, so it's not a novelty, and it's a matter of budget. I mean, I cannot say anything more. Yeah.
So, thank you very much for your questions, and sorry for stopping here, but we will be around. So if you have more questions, don't hesitate to come and speak to us during the coffee, during the cocktail afterwards. We're here to answer any question you might have. So I propose that, thank you very much. You can actually So you got a little spoiler from Sohil regarding the next point in the agenda. And I will actually, I'm very pleased to give the floor now to Audrey because we're a very productive unit. This is actually the second study we did. We did another one 2 years ago, or no, 3 years ago. And it's actually also, I mean, it will also showcase the added value of MSCA, but from a very different dimension. And I will let Audrey give you more detail.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michaela, and welcome again to everyone. So as Michaela just mentioned, this study that I will present you now is actually the first study of the unit. And you will see at the time that we had some kind of similar conclusions, and we will echo very well what Molloy and Michaela already presented you a few minutes ago. So this study is called the Innovative Dimension of Horizon 2020 MSCA ITNs, so Innovative Training Networks, which were the doctoral networks under the previous framework program. And we decided, so contrary to the study that was just presented to you, focusing on the added value overall, added value of MSCA Doctorates, this study is more focused on the innovation angle. And we wanted to really develop a methodology and a full approach to track, to measure, to analyze all innovative aspects, and in order also to provide policy feedback conclusions. So I will first go to the rationale and the objectives of the study, the full methodology, which is per se one of the main results as well of the study, the main findings, and of course a few conclusions and recommendations that we had already 3 years ago. So we were back in 2022 even, and we were finishing the last calls of Horizon 2020. We were starting already with Horizon Europe, but we had already a very good overview of what we had funded under Horizon 2020. So we had funded more than 1,035 ITN projects. They had recruited almost 12,000 fellows, early stage researchers at the time, and for an overall budget of 3.42 billion euros, so representing more than 55% of the total MSCA budget. So we had on average per project almost 9 beneficiaries, more than 1 SME per project, recruiting almost 12 fellows per project. So we thought like all these projects, all these potential results, we have a potential gold mine for success stories, but not only, for also generated innovation and a lot of best and innovative practices to share. So this was the first rationale. Then, as you heard already, we have the biggest budget of the program, but we are not visible enough. Everybody outside knows postdoctoral fellowship, a bit less about the other actions, and in particular doctoral networks. So we thought like we should give more visibility, but also show how innovative are our projects, which I recall were called Innovative Training Networks under H2020. Another rationale was that if you don't measure, if you don't analyze what you are implementing, you cannot improve. So we needed to find a way to systematically track and analyze the generated outputs of all our projects. And the objectives were of 3 different goals. So first of all, to propose a practical methodology for tracking innovation in all our MSCA ITN projects, to collect and present the most relevant innovative aspects that we had in those projects, and finally to draw some conclusions and recommendations to further improve the program. So as I told you, one of the main results is the methodology itself, and you will see why. So we tried to develop this approach. We tested this approach to assess all the types of different innovation in our doctoral networks. And this methodology is very powerful because you can actually replicate this approach to any kind of EU-funded programs. So this is what we sold also when we published the study. But this is a very a good approach if you want to test all the innovation in any other EU-funded programs. So how to track innovation in ITNs or any other kind of project? So first of all, we had to identify the appropriate population. And looking back at H2020, we selected the most mature projects, the one already finished or the one nearly finished, to make sure that we had enough results and outputs. We also had to identify the nature and type of data to be collected. We had some structured data from our report, from our databases, but also unstructured data that we had to collect almost manually. We had to propose and define the appropriate indicators. So we also decided to have both quantitative and qualitative indicators. And finally, to propose a method to collect and analyze all this data that was sometimes automated fully, semi-automated, or fully manually. So one of the first findings that we focused on was about looking at the tangible innovation produced by our projects. And what we call tangible innovation is the direct innovation, so generated outputs such as patents or products that will go on the market, and the level of maturity in terms of innovation in our ITN projects. What we saw is that out of the 550 projects that we analyzed, almost 25% of them could be flagged for direct innovation. And one of the first findings was that in certain scientific domains, such as pharmacology, nanoscience, physics, that usually encompass innovation-intensive industries, they were more likely to produce patentable results. This could be expected, you will tell me, but it was already nice to see it in ITN projects. We also saw that beneficiaries with an already established track record in participation were more successful with regard to innovation outputs. So the more you participate in ITNs, you get experience, you know how it works, and you may generate even more innovation. In addition, we saw that all the beneficiaries that we have in ITNs from the industry sector, especially those acting as project coordinators, were associated with the most innovative projects. So in terms of tangible innovation, the one led by coordinators from the industry were generating more tangible outputs than the others. Interestingly as well, and linked to the question we had about industrial doctorates, we also showed that among those projects flagged for direct innovation and tangible innovation, EIDs, industrial doctorates under H2020, showed also a higher patent performance than the other networks. And this was also a very surprising, I mean, not surprising per se, but this was interesting to see that even though that under H2020, the EID projects were smaller sometimes, so proportionally to their size, they were more performant for tangible innovation than the other networks. We didn't want to focus only on tangible innovation, and we thought that we would focus also on what we call non-tangible innovation, such as organizational innovation, social innovation, networking opportunities, synergies, all these elements that are in the end key features of Doctoral Networks program and ITN as well at the time. And we analyzed how our projects were doing in all those different aspects. And we saw that the innovative features of the ITN program correlated very well with tangible innovation outputs, meaning, and this was particularly true for true for social innovation, innovative training practices, SME or industry involvement, networking opportunities, and synergy aspects. So it meant that all our projects that we had flagged already for tangible innovation were also doing better for all those non-tangible innovation aspects. We also checked, among other data sets, all the MSCA Fellows questionnaires that they have to fill in at the end of their fellowship and 2 years after the end of their fellowship to show how the innovative training network could enhance further the employability of the fellow, and especially in finding research and innovation related jobs. And for 74% of them, they were employed in research and innovation related jobs right after the fellowship. So overall, based on those findings, we could conclude that the MSCA ITN design and structure and all our key features that are characteristics of the program, not only for Doctoral Networks, but we were looking at it in particular in this study, they provide a sustainable ecosystem and environment that can lead to innovation and all types of innovation. So we checked in these studies the innovation, the exploitation of the results that can lead further to cross-sectoral synergies. And we saw in these studies a real impact in terms of innovation of our projects. What the study shows as well is that the MSCA ITN are as performant in terms of innovation, and I'm talking of tangible innovation as well, as the rest of H2020 program. And this was our number one finding, I would say, because this was not expected at all, because one could think that ITN projects are mostly focused on the training of young researchers at the very beginning of their research career, so not entirely focusing on innovation. The study demonstrated the opposite. So this was one of the biggest findings. We also confirmed the excellence of the program. I didn't have time to go through it today, but I really invite you to check the study in detail. We also showed, as I mentioned already, that certain scientific domains are more prone to generate IP-related outputs, such as patents. And we also showed with this study that measuring and analyzing tangible and non-tangible innovation is crucial for the future improvement of the action and future policy. As recommendation, we saw that success breeds success. So it's true that with experience in general in doctoral networks, this can lead to even more results. We also showed in this study that the inclusion of innovators and even big innovators that we identified in the study in a project consortium can act as a kind of predictor for innovation generation. And finally, it was a very good opportunity today to present you again this study, even though the work was done a few years ago, but it's always nice and crucial for us to receive also your feedback or your suggestion for any future improvement in the future. Yeah. So I really invite you to have a look at the full study that was published in a peer-reviewed journal, F1000 Research Journal. So you have the QR code. Just to mention that all the data sets that we use for this study are also publicly available. And when we published this study back in 2023, we had also a lot of dissemination and communication around it. You may have heard about it maybe, but if not, please read, share, and cite. And with this, if you have any questions, I would be very happy to answer them. Thank you. Maybe just before finishing, I forgot. I'm not sure they are in the room, No, they are not in the room, but I wanted to mention and to thank all the colleagues involved also in this work. I was not the only one involved in the study, and we had actually several external experts also helping us retrieve and collect manually the data from the reports of our projects. We had also all our project officer colleagues involved in collecting the data, in working on identifying the indicators as well, and my colleagues as well, co-authors of this publication, so Yanis Pitsios, Fabrizio Martone, and Riccardo Ricci, and of course, Sohil Luca, who was fully involved in this work as well. Thanks a lot. So.
Thank you very much for a very nice overview of Horizon 2020 program. So basically what we see is that valorization is much higher in doctoral networks, which are AAD and European Doctorate. But does it mean that we should increase funding for this? Because valorization is really what we need from these projects. What I see is that unfortunately, in the last call, only 5 networks were AAD. So basically there is decrease, not increase. So basically it's contradictory to what you say. We would like to have more, but funding for AD is decreasing. I think it's not, should be improved in the future. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for the question. So indeed, we had a few changes when we started Horizon Europe. One of them being that all industrial doctorates and joint doctorates were competing together with the standard doctoral networks per scientific panel, which was not the case under H2020, where we had dedicated budget for each modality. We also, under H2020, we also had the possibility of having small industrial doctorates and bigger industrial doctorates. And I think it was a bit easier also to implement for the beneficiaries. So there are a few things that we could now maybe check again in Horizon Europe to see a bit the trends.
As I have been also organizing of AID, basically it's very difficult to organize this type of network because industrial partners usually they have low impact factors, they have less number of publications, and when they are competing directly with normal, they are losing because basically they can't get the same level. So basically, but results of such networks are much better because, for example, we have now running network, and 2 students already offered one permanent position, one just postdoc position. Before 1 year finishing their PhD, they are going to a big pharma. So pharma is interesting because they can see the students, they can select them already. So it's big success. But if you can't compete with normal doctorates, we can't get to this level. So basically, I think it's not only for me, but just for all AID projects. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. And yes, I really encourage you tomorrow to further discuss the issue of visibility, attractiveness, and yeah, we will have a lot to discuss tomorrow. Thank you. Any other questions?
My comment is only just to thank you for the report, and also thank you for include social innovation, because when we promote innovation, we talk about health, engineering, chemistry, because it's very related with patents. But I think Marie Curie and the ITN Horizon 2020 provide very innovation in social science. So I think it's a great idea to include the social innovation in the report. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just to mention that before the study, when we were presenting a bit what our projects were doing for innovation, patents, and this kind of innovative outputs, we were always selecting projects from human sciences, and they do have patents in this field as well. Yeah. No more questions? Okay, so I have the pleasure to announce that you will now have a well-deserved coffee break. So don't hesitate to drink water and as much as you can for then being ready for the second part of today's event. So let's meet at 4:15 in this room and see you very soon. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Before actually moving to the next point of the agenda, I wanted to give you a little piece of information for tomorrow. So thank you very much for replying to the Slido. I think all of you did, so it's perfect. We will actually take care of the allocation during this session before the cocktail. And you will receive also an email with the workshop in which you have been allocated. But we will also publish everything outside. So when you exit this auditorium, you take the door on the right, and immediately on the left, we will actually print everything, and you will able to see in which workshop you have been assigned. Okay? So I propose now that we move to the next item of the agenda, which is going to be presented by Sohil Luca, which you have already know since he has introduced himself. Just a kind reminder, he's a senior expert at DG EAC and in the unit which is in charge of Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions, and he will be presenting to you the future of the MSCA doctoral training. Sohil, please. I don't know if you prefer this one.
I use this one. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm not very good with PowerPoints because with the future of, I wanted to find sort of like a crystal ball kind of thing for like, I don't know, they call it icon or I mean, the things that move, but I couldn't do it. Before I start, and I promise to stick to time, I'm going off script before even starting the script. No, because like Graham, also MSCA is personal for me. Because also this year is my 30th anniversary. I mean, as not to be confused with my birthday. So it is my 30th wedding anniversary. And 30 years ago, I married, I mean, my wife, okay, that's logical. I mean, we got married. And then 1 month after, she tells me that, okay, I got this fellowship. It's a Marie Curie fellowship. Okay, so, and I mean, I proposed to her before even knowing that she was going to get the fellowship. But she says, okay, I mean, it's 1 month after we got married. It said they really loved my proposal and they're going to give me this. I'm going to do my doctorate, you know, but they said I have to actually leave. I have to, I said, they like you here at the Institute in Napoli, you know, in Italy. They said, no, they said, you know, to get the fellowship, you must go to another country. And she's going to Paris. And of course, this sounded very suspicious to me. Now, years went by, and now I know what this mobility rule is. But, you know, in our household, MSCA, you know, has a special place. Again, I mean, I never applied for it, but also more evidence that this year is not my 30th anniversary is that I was a contractor. I was getting grant from Horizon when it was FP4. We are working with FP10 now. Yes, so I was competing like with the likes of Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin. So with that said, this was just, you know, to get you in the mood. So Graham gave us a very fascinating account of the past. And so this leaves us only 2 items to discuss. That's the present and the future. I will go relatively fast so that we can perhaps discuss a bit. So as you know, any doctoral network of any kind is very, you know, simple, let's say, concept. It's consortium based. That's very important. And the consortium get together and present one big project, usually multidisciplinary. And that's the beauty of it. It is subdivided into smaller projects for each doctoral candidate to do their work and then put together the puzzle, let's say, with this sub project. It has 3 types, or as we call it, implementation modes. The classical one, which we simply call the doctoral networks, the industrial doctorates, and the joint doctorates. What defines the industrial doctorates are two things only. One, for the doctoral candidate to spend a minimum of 50% of the fellowship duration at the premises of the non-academic partner. Secondly, to be co-supervised by the academic and the non-academic partners. And here I should also, pause and just say again that we have an issue with the name industrial doctorate. I'm saying issue with ourselves, that we so far could not find a better name, because it's, of course, for any non-academic entity. But of course, calling it the non-academic doctorates would be like shooting ourselves in the foot, because it would be sort of paradoxical. Now, the important part of this slide that I would like to highlight is that in a consortium that opted for industrial doctorates at the proposal stage, every fellow must do industrial doctorate. Same for joint doctorates, where the candidate finish their doctorate getting either one diploma from 2 universities or several diplomas from the several universities. I say several, that's almost theoretical. Usually it's double. I don't know of examples of candidates getting like triple diplomas. Same thing, every doctoral candidate in the consortium must do a joint doctorate. Now, we talk a lot about FP10 and how we would like to make maybe positive changes to the program and so forth. However, maybe what not everybody knows, that within the same framework program, which is now the Horizon Europe, we actually have some margin for going from 1 year to the next in the work program to make some changes. Not revolutionary, but they could be significant. And actually for doctoral networks, from the second call and until this year's call, we have actually, I dare say, improved the action quite a bit together with our colleagues in REA. I think that the most significant changes happened in 2023, where the main type of doctoral networks, which at the launch of Horizon Europe used to be, again, using the jargon, the grant size was 360 person month. This translates to what? If you give the fellows 3-year fellowships, then the consortium would have a maximum of 10 fellows. So we increased this to 540, which again, in 3-year fellowship currency, this would take it to 15 fellows. Another important change that year is that for joint doctorates, and only for joint doctorates, we allowed the projects to extend fellowships to 4-year, which also was important, especially in the case of joint doctorates, because there are several steps in there that are time consuming. We also, every year by year, we put some simplifications. I will not go through all of them. And I will also skip this summary slide, but I will just go directly to the reflecting on the future, because I think that's probably the most important part, and the part that, would stimulate more discussion. My apologies for any of you who heard this before, I mean, as recent as yesterday, but the majority in the room haven't. So it's, it's a specific targeted apology. So basically, I mean, when we do these things of actually making changes in policy, on actions, in programs, of course, we don't work in vacuum. We do studies like the one we heard today and others within the frame of, feedback to policy. There are larger studies also commissioned, centrally by the Commission, like the midterm evaluation of Horizon Europe in general, or actually the whole evaluation of Horizon 2020. Political reports, like, the one of Draghi, Letta, and Haytor, and feedback from stakeholders, and importantly, of course, from projects, who are also stakeholders. So putting all this together for doctoral networks, actually, the main message was continuity, that, okay, the action is working well. Don't make dramatic changes because it is working well, as they say, in the south of the US, okay, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But, maybe we don't have to fix it, but maybe we can make it prettier. So more funding, yes, we know. And of course, the big message was simplification and flexibility. Getting a bit more specific on these, let's say, issues, if you will. No, but I made this slide first because on the untouchables, because these are aspects of doctoral networks that really stakeholders were very strong. I mean, strong even is an understatement. That you say, just do not touch these aspects, and you know them very well. And they are the ones that also, according to the study, that makes the doctoral networks, our doctoral networks, special. But we always had issues reported to us about the duration of the 3 years, maximum 3 years for the fellowships, and issues with administration and complexity and need for simplification, especially for industrial doctorates and joint doctorates, which, I mean, it's no secret that the demand for them from the consortia is going down. And this, of course, is something that we want to fix, because these two actions are highly strategic. Also, issues related to secondments, needing more flexibility in defining them more along the way when reality becomes more evident. So basically, we thought about all this put together, and we sat together, with Rhea many times, formally and informally. And our current thinking, which, as I said, before, it is just, a scenario that would benefit from your opinions as well, is basically going towards simplification and flexibility. That's actually would be the main change. And I call it empowering the consortium. So what's happening here? So we're thinking about, just instead of having 3 project types, classic, industrial, and joint, there would be only one type of doctoral networks where the consortium would have actually the right of blending types, including having a blend of 100% industrial or a blend of 100% joint. So nobody is obliged to do blended, but you can. But I also said that we would like to have more industrial and joint doctorates. And we were also reflecting on the idea of actually giving the consortium some financial incentive for every fellow that is doing joint or industrial doctorates. Again, to be clear, any financial incentives would not be going to the fellow, but would be going to the consortium or to the particular partner that is doing this. And this, these are subject to a study right now to clarify all of these ifs that I'm saying. Again, this was mentioned briefly to increase the maximum
fellowship duration to 4 years. And I stress the word maximum because, you know, they don't have to actually give every fellow 4 years, but they would now have the possibility. And finally is to try to find some ways of giving more flexibility to the secondments while maintaining the requirement of judging something during the proposal stage, because we consider that the secondment plan as actually part of the excellence as well, the way you devise it. So we don't know yet how, but it could be like maybe during the proposal stage, the consortium would provide a conceptual plan for the secondments that would be clarified further once the fellow is hired, for instance, or at a later stage. But it's going into this direction. Now, what is nice about this scenario is that you are allowed to use the status quo, what is available right now. But we removed rules. You're not obliged to. And let me give you an example, because I found it, let's say, you know, a very striking example. And some people here in the room who are, you know, passionate about joint doctorates will understand. And now, because of the mosaic of rules and regulations that regulate doctoral education in Europe, that are regulated at national, regional, and sometimes at university or department level, made it that some combinations of countries and universities are easy to make joint doctorates. Some are difficult. Some are illegal, are impossible. That is, you know, if you have in countries, say your committee must have your supervisor, the other, your committee cannot have your supervisor. Then you're stuck. So here you have a situation of a consortium giving a proposal, and they have 12 combinations for fellows that work beautifully and one that is incompatible. Then they decide, okay, we're just going to apply for the normal one. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. So by giving this, you can have everybody joint, but you're allowed not to. So it's just more flexibility. So basically, you don't have to worry about this. We are thinking also about extending the secondment to 100%. That is no limit. Right now, there is no limit for the joint and industrial doctorate, but also for the normal doctorate. Why? For two reasons. One is that we've had it now for 3 years for joint and industrial doctorates. We haven't seen anybody abusing it. Secondly, knowing that nobody will actually go for 100% secondments, then why put this rule? It's one less bullet to worry about in the big rule book, because the more rules you remove, the less this monster will be. So this is basically our thinking, and you know, some of this is subject to studies, especially the parts related to money. And for the rest, you know, we are still, you know, consulting with you and with others. Yeah, that's so. At this point, I have no idea how much time. I mean, I talked about marriage and stuff. You know, I'm good still. Yeah, no. 6 minutes. Yeah. I will be happy to take any question. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introduction of a new program. I think for ERC, maybe it's indeed good for some researchers, but I am more about this industrial part. When creating industrial networks, basically there was like a need that industrial partners will participate a lot. But with this framework, maybe they will be not, because when you create a network, it's much more easy to find academic partners. And academic partners look stronger. So basically, I'm afraid this will be biased with respect that industry will not be participating as much as they participate in industrial networks, which are very difficult to create, but they are most profitable because idea should come basically for such network from industrial partners. So my opinion that possibly keeping the previous industrial doctorate and even increasing their share would be very nice. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, we'll add it to the mix of the thinking toolbox. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Could you elaborate on the possible flexibility on the planning of the secondments? That would be very much appreciated. Could you elaborate a bit on how that could be implemented in practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will not be much more than what I said. So basically, because again, we are in the reflection phase. Why? Because for secondments, we have the luxury that, I mean, it's something that we can decide more down the line. It's not one of the that flexibility is not one of the urgent items that we need to decide on. So, like as I said, one idea is that in the proposal, the consortium would put in a conceptual plan. That is, you know, in order to achieve this, somebody would need to go there because they have this expertise, whatever, which would make sense and it would be evaluated. The principle that we will for sure maintain, no matter, is that it has to be evaluated somehow, and it has to be more flexible than now. You had a question.
Thank you. Jan Berens from the University of Twente. I'm very happy to hear that there's more flexibility in secondments. However, I have a little bit of, I don't know, mixed feelings about somehow it's good in the proposal phase that you don't have to detail it, but in the implementation phase, it's more difficult. And of course, it's good that you have a concept plan, but for me as project manager, at the moment, the grant agreement is also somehow a concept plan. Of course, that we want to find rigid because there is a reason why these secondments were done. Having more flexibility in implementation would be good, but somehow we already get that, so that's very appreciated. So I don't see the big difference. The other part is going to a maximum thing. Yes, it's good, let's remove that rule. But for us in the implementation phase, sometimes a minimum requirement could be, maybe I need to be careful here, as long as it's not too much, minimum would be more beneficial, because we maybe sometimes struggle to keep the people and the beneficiaries and the companies or the institutions to like, hey, but you promised this was there for a reason. I even have students like, oh, do I really have to go on this secondment? Yes, because there is an added value as we see, but they don't see it. They say, please lock me up in the basement or the attic and then get me out. So there maybe the question is, how do you want to do that? So how?
Okay, I mean, there is the one thing I want to say is that, okay, thank you. That this is the idea of introducing a minimum for the secondments.
Yeah, but if it should be a minimum, like 1-2 months, not like half a year, because that's too much.
Yeah, and secondly, maybe not answer me now, but maybe over the cocktail. Now, how would you do it? How would you get more flexibility? I mean, you're into that. So I would love to hear that over the cocktail. We together. So how much? Well, Michaela will tell us. Yeah, 1 more minute.
Yes. Oh, hello. This is Liz Elvidge from Imperial College in London. I think this scheme is absolutely fantastic, and the proposals are great in terms of comments and industry.
Okay, time is over.
No, I've been on this crusade for a very, very long time. This is a little bit left field, but the skills that these students develop are extraordinary. Can we not call them soft skills? We call them professional skills. I think in training people to be excellent at interviews, excellent at applying for jobs, these are not soft skills, these are life skills. But the rest of it, I think, is brilliant.
Thank you. I think we tend more to call them transferable skills. So, I mean, but I think it's good. I mean, it's a nice comment to increase the prestige of those skills. Yeah, thanks.
I'm afraid we only have time for one more question. So, yeah. Brief Sohail during the cocktail? Okay, perfect. Any of you, one last question? No? No? Okay, then. So, sorry about that, but there is a planning. So I propose then that we move to the next item of the agenda, which is actually the panel on the state of doctoral training in Europe. And the panel will be chaired by Klaus Haupt, who is the head of unit in the Research Executive Agency in charge of Doctoral Networks. And I will give him immediately the floor. And I also invite the panelists to also come, and Klaus will introduce you.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants in this event on the added value of the MSCA Doctorates, dear stakeholders. Yes, my name is Klaus Haupt. I have the pleasure of heading the Doctoral Networks unit at the European Research Executive Agency. And I will have the pleasure of moderating and of chairing, facilitating the panel discussion with our panelists that you can see sitting next to me. We have indeed invited 3 high-level panelists to the discussion this afternoon, representing different stakeholders groups and looking at the issue of doctoral training in a complementary perspective. I'll start introducing them on my left-hand side. Luca Perego is the head of unit Choose Europe and MSCA at the Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture of the European Commission. Luca's unit develops the policies and the actions aimed at attracting and retaining research talent in Europe. And it's Luca's policy unit that we in REA report to as an implementing body. Luca is an electronic engineer by training and has a vast experience in the private and public sector. He joined the European Commission in 2010 and was entrusted with different assignments at the Publications Office as assistant to the Director General of the Education and Culture, and more recently as head of a unit for stakeholder engagement, innovation, and the European Institute of Technology. Welcome and thank you, Luca. And I continue on my right-hand side, the gentleman sitting on my right-hand side, Simon Marti. Simon works for the European University Association. I don't think that the EUA needs much of an introduction, but of course, as you know, it's the association and the collective voice of the universities of Europe. There's a community of over 900 members and represents universities and national rectors' conferences in 48 European countries, and more in particular within EUA. Simon is the head of the Council for Doctoral Education, the largest European forum in this field. And Simon is the co-author of a survey that I've printed out and that you can consult on the internet, of a survey report on policies in doctoral education that was just issued 6 months ago. He joined the EUA in July 24 after heading the Swiss Contact Office for European Research in Brussels for the past 5 years. And prior to that, Simon was head of the Office of Science at the Swiss Embassy to the United States. And the gentleman sitting on the far right, looking from my perspective, Karsten Welsch, Professor Karsten Welsch. He holds a PhD in accelerator physics and that he obtained at the University of Frankfurt. He worked as a postdoc at the Max Planck Institute for Nuclear Physics in Heidelberg and at the European Organization for Nuclear Research, known as CERN, in Geneva. He joined the University of Liverpool back in 2008 and became a full professor in 2011. And Carsten was the head of the University of Liverpool's physics departments between 2016 and 23. And coming to the most important linkage that he has with MSCA, Carsten has initiated and coordinated 6 pan-European research networks, many of which are doctoral networks under MSCA that were funded with more than 25 million euros. And he has trained more than 100 MSCA fellows in his career. So quite impressive numbers. And Carsten participates in the panel here as a high-level scientist and as a professor, having, of course, a vast knowledge and excellent insights about MSCA and in particular about the doctoral networks. Welcome and thank you to Carsten and to Simon as well. We have 60 minutes in total for the panel. We have 3 rounds of questions that we have prepared for the panelists. And for each round, approximately, we have foreseen 15 minutes. And this will hopefully leave us at the end the time and the room for some questions that the audience might wish to raise with the panelists. The round number 1, doctoral education at a crossroads. And I'll start with Simon. Simon, the 26 EUA CDE report that I just referred to describes doctoral education as standing at the crossroads of geopolitical disruption and technological acceleration. Simon, in your view, what is the single most urgent challenge facing doctoral education in Europe today and why?
Thanks. Can you hear me now? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thanks a lot for this introduction. It's a great pleasure to be here. There is an easy answer and a more complicated one to your question. I think the easy one is just sustainable funding. So we asked that question in our survey that we did last year with our members, and 30% of them said when we asked what is the single most important challenge for you, it's really to ensure that there is sustainable funding for doctoral education. So that's quite straightforward. But what we found also in this survey, and as Klaus said, you can find it on our website. Last year when we did this survey, we wanted to see the state of doctoral education, to learn about the state of doctoral education in Europe in general, also based on the Salzburg principles, these important principles on the doctorate in Europe. But we also wanted to see how do the newer challenges affect the doctorate. Geopolitical changes, but also technological changes. Keyword here is AI. And I would say we found that there are also quite a few other challenges there that are extremely important. And one of them is, for instance, AI. We saw, for instance, that of all the universities, we had 217 universities participating in our survey. They represented around 28% of doctoral candidates in Europe. So none of these universities said that there are no guidelines or policies needed to kind of manage AI, the use of AI in doctoral education. So none of them said we don't need to do something about it. But at the same time, only 5% of these universities said that the guidelines and policies that they have in place at the moment are sufficient. So we see there is a big challenge there. There are other challenges we saw, for instance, I just touched them briefly. We saw, for instance, and that's surely linked to the geopolitical situation, the topic of research security has gained an importance at doctoral schools when it comes, for instance, to admission of new doctoral candidates, but also the daily functioning of doctoral research and education. And lastly, and it was also mentioned before, the importance of collaboration with societal partners, with industry, for instance. Also there we see that the universities think that they contribute already a lot to advancing society, to collaborating with society, but there is a need for more funding opportunities, for instance, especially when it comes to closer collaborating with SMEs or smaller public entities or also non-profit organizations.
Very good. Thank you very much, Simon. You touched upon the issue of the artificial intelligence. And indeed, this is also something that we wanted to raise as a question with a practitioner, with a university professor working in the field, Carsten. Indeed, I mean, AI is one of the most important challenges that we are facing in doctoral training. How are you, as a university professor, navigating the need to enable researchers to use AI tool in a responsible way, but at the same time preserving the originality and the integrity of doctoral research? And what concrete policies should doctoral schools have in place to address the issue?
Yeah, thanks, Klaus. I'm not sure if I would use the word one of the biggest challenges we are facing. I think it's rather one of the biggest opportunities we have at the moment to accelerate research and innovation. To me, the question is not should we use AI, but how do we make sure that students and researchers use AI in a responsible way, and that we are also very clear about some areas where the use of AI should become the standard, be it the management of data and publications, be it standardized processes that just have to be repeated, and that researchers should adapt as tools, as technologies that are also brought into play elsewhere. And then there are other areas where AI should not be standard use, but it should be something that you need to declare when you are using it. For instance, when you are using it for the analysis of data that is more sensitive, or when you are using it as part of the research write-ups that you are doing, there you should be transparent, and it should be really clear what is still your own development, what is your own research output, and where have you used AI, and also where are the limits that you apply. And then there are also areas where it should not be allowed to use AI at all. And that is in the areas where researchers really should be the ones that do the creative thinking. They should be the ones originating ideas. So in doctoral training, you get the PhD award at the end of the day for being an independent thinker and coming up with new research results. And that's something that you simply cannot transfer over to an AI to do the job for you. So to me, there are already different ways of looking at AI in general. There's not just one evil AI. I think there are these different levels. In terms of policies, I'm also not so sure if there's a lot that can be done because the development is so rapid that we are probably always behind and chasing reality to some extent. I did ask my own university the question just a few weeks ago when one of my students submitted their thesis, what is the standardized statement when they use AI for polishing the language at the end of the editing process, and I'm not even sure if I was surprised, but there was no standardized statement, and there is no standardized statement for most universities. So even for these kind of very general, very basic statements at the moment, there's nothing that resembles a policy. So I'm not sure if we really can define that to that extent. Now, when it comes to useful things, I think things that the Commission, RIA, and consortia can do is they can do a lot in providing case studies, success stories, and really shaping the way that this is used in a way that is beneficial for research and for researchers. And for researchers, I really also mean the young researchers, the doctoral candidates, but also their supervisors. So I think in terms of templates, in terms of case studies, success stories, communicating these clearly, showing opportunities, and then encouraging others to maybe follow these examples. These are all good examples of how we can get the most out of AI.
Thank you very much, Karsten. Yes, indeed. I mean, AI is not that much a challenge, but it is definitely an opportunity. And thank you also, I mean, at the end of the answer of pinpointing some aspects on what the EU and what the Commission and what the Research Executive Agency could do. You were mentioning the case studies, success stories, and templates that we could be making available. And maybe this is something that we can think about. So thank you, Karsten. Luca. The 2025 EU CDE report flags the importance of doctoral education to the advancement of society. How do you see a bottom-up program like MSCA, a curiosity-driven program, as we were hearing today? How do you see a program like MSCA contributing to this objective?
Thank you very much, Klaus. And actually, I feel really honored to be here today. I came to learn to introduce myself, even if I have very long working experience. I'm only 2 weeks in the unit de facto. So it's I feel a bit strange to be here in a panel and explaining things that I think you may know even better than me. However, as regards to your question, I think we have to go to the really definition on bottom-up and avoid to think that bottom-up doesn't mean that research is connected to societal needs, because actually when we see applicants of MSCA Doctoral Networks coming from both academic or non-academic sectors, of course, those applicants when they work on the topics or the proposals, they focus on the scientific, technological, and the societal challenges that they encounter in practice. And what we see is that with this approach, very often they naturally gravitate towards areas of major scientific and societal importance, and sometimes they even anticipate emerging scientific and challenges or opportunities. We have a couple of examples which are really striking, in my opinion, at least for the newcomers as me, because actually AI and machine learning is the second most common topic among all MSCA funded projects, and is the topic for 20% of MSCA Doctoral Networks. This has translated to over 1,000 MSCA projects and 1 billion euro invested in this field over the past 10 years. So MSCA knew well before anybody else where technology was going. And another example is quantum science, which is very promising. As an electrical engineer, I know very well, with around 600 MSCA funded projects and investments of over 300 million. So again, in the last 10 years. This is, I think, pretty striking, without saying, as we all know, that the COVID vaccine has been possible thanks to all the basic research that was done on mRNA before. Maybe another important element, which is important to underline, is in a bottom-up program as the Doctoral Networks, is this interdisciplinarity, because this freedom left to put different disciplines together is the enabling condition for new ideas and innovative solutions to emerge. And again, it has been mentioned many times, but I think that the fact that there are 23 Nobel laureates who have been MSCA fellows or supervision show that at the end, MSCA is contributing to society. And as Alfred Nobel said, the prize recognizes those who have contributed to the greatest benefit to humankind. So I think it is the best evidence.
Thank you very much, Luca, for this very forceful statement on the importance of the curiosity-driven research and the bottom-up approach. We have seen it indeed in the study on the added value that this was one of the main strengths of the program of MSCA as it was perceived by the stakeholders and by the respondents to the survey. And I remember when going through your report, Simon, that indeed you noted at some stage that there were fears on the part of some of the stakeholders that the future framework program could have the more mission-driven elements, that it could look more towards the strategic priorities of the European Union, and that maybe these parts in the framework program would be reinforced compared to the bottom-up parts of the program. But we are very glad, I mean, to hear from your side, Luca, I mean, that the importance of the bottom-up approach is still being reinforced and really being brought to the forefront by you. So that's certainly very good. We'll continue with the second round of questions. The second round is on the proven value, untapped potential. What can we do better in the future? And I will continue with Luca. The study found that 94% of MSCA and non-MSCA participants recognize that doctoral networks deliver clear added value compared to the other PhD programs. What do you consider the single most important dimension of that added value? And why has it been so hard for other programs to replicate? What can the Commission do in the future for better alignment between MSCA and non-MSCA doctoral frameworks across Europe?
Thank you again. Okay, this is easier as a question because I think it has been mentioned several times here. So I can only echo what is a kind of evidence. And again, as a newcomer, I am impressed by this combination of the three I's, interdisciplinary, intersectoral, and international. But I would add it also with these versatile possibilities offered by the secondment. These two together make the doctoral experience of an MSCA fellow a journey across countries, sectors, and disciplines. And this is also why it is so highly valued in both scientifically and in the job market. On the second part of your question about promoting those practices beyond the doctoral networks, Let me give you a couple of examples where the Commission has tried, is actually spreading the feature of the DNs more broadly. One is the University Alliances, where the synergies between the MSCA actions and the University Alliances are gradually promoting through translational doctoral programs throughout Europe. And another example is the European degree label, two initiatives, by the way, done by Vanessa, if I can remind it, where the criteria for having a European degree at the doctoral level are very well aligned with the MSCA Doctoral Network principles. And last but not least, we heard, and actually this is also another evidence from the study, is that the structural impacts on institutions and the positive ripple effect of the doctoral networks is having in spreading the MSCA practices among participant organizations. This is also another important impact that we are having.
Thank you very much, Luca. Looking at your background and what you have been doing in the Commission so far, you were mentioning synergies, cooperations between programs. You were mentioning the European degree label. You have been responsible in the past, in particular, for the European Institute of Technology and Innovation. How would you see the possibilities, to reinforce the cooperation, the synergies between what MSCA is doing and, for example, the European Institute of Technology or other innovation-driven actions that the Commission is funding?
Thank you very much for the question. I have to say that when I was in the other unit, I got in contact many times with Claire, my predecessor, to foster synergies. I know there is a very nice guidelines actually for cooperation. Honestly, I would have liked to do something more and more structured. When I look at the doctoral networks, they are small knowledge innovation communities, very small, and with a different time frame. But definitely, if I look at what I know the best, the EIT and its communities, surely there is the possibility to connect better the MSCA fellows with the innovation ecosystem created by each KIC. This is an opportunity that should be explored also because now there is a bit more clarity on the future of the EIT, at least internally in the Commission. And since I had the possibility to work more closely with the colleagues in the Innovation Directorate in RTD on EIC, but also on the future innovation ecosystems, I know there will be very important opportunities where I think that we should definitely try to plug the knowledge and the experience that our fellows are getting after being funded by the MSCA actions.
Very good. Thank you very much, Luca, for these concrete examples of how cooperation between various EU initiatives and EU-funded programs could be reinforced in the future. I'll turn to Karsten again. The study found that 68% of MSCA supervisors, which is 20% more than the non-MSCA supervisors, agree that there are major differences between MSCA and the non-MSCA PhD programs, with networking, with the III mobility, with secondments and transferable skills, training being the most cited strength for the MSCA doctorates. From a university perspective, Karsten, what prevents these features from becoming standard in national doctoral programs?
Yeah, excellent question. Audrey said earlier on that Marie Curie Doctoral Networks are different in that they fund ecosystems, not just specific tasks or actions. And I think that describes very nicely why it is such a successful and effective action. And to me, it's one of the best if not the best funding scheme that there is in Europe. And the reason is that, so my own research is in particle accelerators, so the big machines that take us back to the beginning of time or that are used in hospitals to treat cancer, and anything that I'm doing requires a lot of funding. It's fundamentally very expensive research. The difference that a doctoral network makes is that every euro of taxpayers' money is directly invested into the future, into the people that will define Europe for decades to come. And you can see that. You can see that during their 3-year journey, they start and they basically have no clue in what they're doing in that particular field. In my area, there is no undergraduate course at pretty much any university in Europe in accelerator science. So they really start with no knowledge, and then you see them spread their wings after 3 years of training, and then all of a sudden they are leaders in the field and they really make a difference. So I think that's already where Marie Curie Doctoral Networks really make a difference. From an academic point of view, I guess they are the dream of every academic who is passionate about teaching, because nobody tells you what to do. You can put together a training program which you think is the very best training program for that group of researchers and partners in the world. That must be your ambition, because you are competitively compared with other proposals, and you know that you need an almost perfect score in order to get the funding. So you really have to think beyond what is the state of the art. You can't use current practice as a guideline. You need to think about where do we need to be in 5 years' time. And the big challenge at the moment is that we are probably living in the most dynamic times when it comes to how we do research ever in the history of humankind. Because at the moment, we talked a lot about AI and new skills like prompt engineering that nobody talked about in the same way 5 years ago. But we also are living in one of the most demanding times when it comes to looking after ourselves and each other. We have a dramatically increasing rise in mental health issues around researchers at any career stage, and the professional skills, as Liz said earlier, they must include this kind of training, and universities will not adjust their training programs on the timescales that are required. So Marie Curie programs really are a way to introduce those new ways of training at a speed that could not be done with any other scheme, really. And that's unparalleled. And then I think what needs to happen is that as part of the doctoral network assessment, it needs to be looked into how do these measures work, what difference do they make, and what we normally do when we have a training course in a new type of skill, we look around and look into who is the best person to develop that training. And most of the time, it will be somebody who is external and somebody who will not be cheap to get for a day or a week as part of a transferable skills training. So you bring them in and you trial that training. And then, of course, the lesson learned must be adopt that training, use the slides, use the material, use whatever they give you, and then roll it out to many more researchers afterwards. So in this sense, the doctoral networks can be a spearhead for an institution or a country to say, this is the way the doctoral training should be going. And when I was chair of the Education and Training and Careers Committee for UKRI, that's exactly what we did. We looked at individual case studies and then said, this is useful for any researcher, any discipline, so do it. I mean, really just do it. And we have the evidence, we have the feedback from participants, and that's really where Marie Curie networks can make a difference way beyond their own remit.
Thank you very much, Carsten. I think that this was one of the most forceful pitches for MSCA and for the doctoral networks that I've ever been listening to. And just quote some things that you said. I mean, ecosystem, that we are funding the best funding scheme, the dream of every researcher. So I think that was really very forceful and very well explained, I mean, in a nutshell, what the strength of the doctoral networks is about. We have been listening to We have been listening during the presentations in the afternoon very often to this reference to the structuring effect that individual doctoral networks can have at institutions. Could you maybe briefly explain, I mean, how do you see the structuring effect that your networks, your doctoral networks at your university, at the University of Liverpool, have been having in the past on the rest of the university, if I may say?
Yeah, actually well beyond the university. So I did exactly what I just described. I looked very critically. So when you have a new idea, and often a crazy idea, you don't know how it's working. So you must look then at the end, did it actually work? And then do some critical self-analysis. And then when it's working, then you go to your faculty and you try to convince them that this is something that should be included for future generation of students. And when that is working, then you also go out to national or international training programs. So I've worked a lot with COVI in Germany on this, on their training courses, and with the UK research office. And so we take these lessons learned, and then we describe the structure of these trainings, we describe the feedback from the participants, and then we change practice. Another good example beyond the skills training is what you mentioned earlier, Sorey, about the secondments. Because secondments is a good example of what everybody initially hated, absolutely hated. Nobody wanted to do it. The students said, we want to do our PhD projects. The supervisor said, we want the students to work on the PhD projects only. We don't want them to waste time elsewhere. And industry said, you keep your students. We don't want them here to learn anything. We are busy enough making money. And what it then really needed is case studies. It needed this to happen to show to everybody how much is in it by doing it. And the students then realized, oh, all of a sudden they have access to skills that they would have never gotten if they stayed at the university. They are a lot more employable. Often they got job offers from the company that hosted them. The supervisors, who fundamentally were often living in their ivory tower looking at their academic challenges, all of a sudden they had industry contacts that they would not have had without these secondments taking place. And industry realized, well, when we take on these fellows who are often at an advanced level of their training, they can help us solve problems that otherwise we could never have addressed. So we had students who during the pandemic developed websites where they provided mental health support for teenagers that were in crisis, and they made a difference to lives that really nobody expected. And I think once you have these case studies and you can show to new people who are skeptical, and rightly skeptical maybe, you can show them, look, this is what happened in the past. This is the experience of actual supervisors, actual students, and actual industry. And then you don't need a lot of convincing anymore, because all of a sudden it's not you arguing, it is you showing that this has happened over and over and over again.
Thank you very much, Kersten. I turn once more to Simon. The EU CDE report identifies MSCA as the most important funding instrument for doctoral education. Yet the REA study flags that over half of the non-MSCA doctoral candidates across Europe are unaware of MSCA. That is a remarkable. This is a remarkable visibility gap for the EU's flagship doctoral program. What would it take to make MSCA a more visible and an even more integral part of Europe's doctoral education landscape?
Thank you very much. So yeah, indeed, there is clearly a gap, because we see there is a very high interest at the institutional level in MSCA, and an awareness that this is a key funding instrument. Maybe a reason also why it's more difficult once we look a bit more, why it's more difficult to kind of spread out this knowledge about and awareness of MSCA. Maybe a hint is when we see that, for instance, supervisor training takes place in much fewer universities than the share of universities that think MSCA is important. So it was more than 80% that say MSCA is one of the most important Horizon, or it is the most important Horizon Europe funding instrument for doctoral, to fund doctoral candidates, doctoral education activities. But it's much lower, the percentages of universities that do offer some kind of supervisor training. And this might be really one of the channels where supervisors could be reached, and also their awareness could be strengthened. I think, yeah, I see really mainly two channels, either via the research offices that most universities have, or via doctoral schools. We know that the research funding at doctoral level is mostly a shared competency between doctoral schools and research offices. It completely depends the university. So I think more should be done there. We also know from other areas, when it comes to other topics, that even relatively small efforts like a seminar or events can make a huge difference when it comes to raising awareness. So perhaps it might be one of the lower hanging fruits. Yeah, just would need to be addressed.
Okay, thank you very much. Simon, indeed, you mentioned supervisors training, research officers, doctoral schools that could do more in order to enhance the visibility of MSCA and the DN component in particular. We have also NCPs in the audience, and obviously I know that you are doing a very great job in doing that. We have been looking at this also internally of the issue of the visibility of the program, and we're thinking indeed, I mean, that we could make it also more visible at the level of the future PhD fellows, meaning at the master's level at the universities, and this is maybe something that we can look into for the future. So I mean, to make it more known with the individuals, and not only at the level of the institutions where it already has obviously quite a higher visibility. Simon, I was also intrigued in your report. You're also talking about cooperation and synergies with other EU programs, and I think that you are quoting two other initiatives in your report. One is the ERC, so the European Research Council, and another one are the European University Alliances. Maybe you could also share a bit your thoughts with us on how we could enhance the cooperation with ERC and also with the Universities Alliances.
Yes, so what we mostly found, of course, is that the ERC plays a huge role also for funding doctoral candidates. We know many doctoral candidates are involved in this project, so that clearly came out there, and often many young researchers who were in an MSCA project move on and apply also for ERC. So there is surely a kind of continuation. Also, when it comes to university alliances, what we find very interesting is, even though it is not one of the main objectives to have more research collaboration inside the alliances, when we asked university what is the biggest added value of the alliances, European University Alliances under Erasmus+, research collaboration ranks very high. So there is clearly something to be done, and we know also from our exchanges with various alliances that they are thinking really a lot about what can be done more when it comes to have more research collaboration.
Thank you very much, Simon, for these ideas with regard to the cooperation with other EU-funded initiatives. We now want to look towards the future with our three panelists, looking at what the future will hold for MSCA in the next framework program. So I have the same question that I would like to raise with all three speakers. Looking ahead to FP10, so to the next generation of the framework program, what is the single most important change that the EU must make to ensure that MSCA doctoral networks continue to deliver and to strengthen their contribution to doctoral education in Europe? Who wants to start?
I can take it. Okay. We are listening, we are consulting. Yesterday we had the second stakeholder meeting. I have to say that joining this unit, I have been very positively impressed by the nice dialogue that there is with not only the colleagues in RIA, but also the main stakeholders, and then of course national contact points and the delegates of the program committee. So we are grabbing information. I have to say again that coming from the EIT, where a decision of the future has been taken a couple of weeks ago, looking at how advanced is the discussion on how the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions may look like in the next framework program. I mean, I am impressed that a lot of options are put on the table and the level of even detailed discussion we are having. So if I wanted to take an easy reply to your question, I can say that what I wanted to ensure in the next MFF is, of course, simplification. This is something under our control. This is something that is always important to focus on. It is always a challenge. It's our problem, not your problem, but I can tell you that the Commission is a bigger machine, very big machine, and I come from procedures, I come from IT, and I know how complicated it can be in the Commission to put a solid processing on. I can also say, but I mean, I just can recall what Sohail has said, that we should also work on more flexibility. But the truth is that what I would like to know, and I hope I have only friends here, because this is at the end of the elephant in the room, I would like to know, to have more budget, more money, because this is the only way to get to achieve the ambition that we all have for the MSCA actions. And there is a commission proposal on the table. You have all seen the past general approach of the council. Let's see, the parliament will say, but this is where the big game will be played, and I will do my best at my level, but I hope also that here there are friends who will support in making sure that MSCA will have the resources that need to deliver in the next MFF.
Thank you very much, Luca. Yes, indeed, budget and funding are key issues when we look towards the next MFF. And I think that indeed many of the ideas which are currently on the table will depend, at the end of the day, will be conditioned also by the overall funding that the Commission and that the European Union will make available. I'll pass on the floor to Simon.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, so the funding is clearly the biggest challenge, or connected to that, the low success rates. But the instruments as such, I think we are actually more focused on keeping what it is now, especially keep it bottom up, non-directionality. If you would have asked me maybe a year ago what is a big challenge for our community, for the universities, it would, and this is clearly addressed already, it would clearly have been the duration, the 3 years. So this is one thing that always came, I think, and it truly also reached you a lot, and then influenced also this change. So we have about half of the funders that do have more like, or less than half, I would say, that have more like 3-year programs. But we know the average duration is actually closer to 4.5 years. So it's clearly good to have a flexibilization there.
Yeah, a couple more suggestions. It was great to hear what's already on the discussion table at the moment. I liked most of the ideas. The ones I didn't like, we can catch up over the cocktail afterwards. I can explain why. Maybe 2 specific suggestions. One is a little bit connected to bottom up and directionality. So we have this connected call for doctoral networks this year, which fall under the race area. So there is an element of directionality, although it's still very much bottom up, where we, I think, should have something similar, and we don't have it, is a call that is connected to infrastructures, because we've just come past the infrastructure deadline last month. And to me, it seems crazy that we make decisions on the one hand over hundreds of millions of infrastructures that are being built and planned in Europe, and that this is not more closely connected to also training people for these very infrastructures, because we're building them not for us, we're building it for them. They will be built over the next 10 years, and then they will use it throughout their career. So at the same time, as something is put on something like the S3 roadmap, shouldn't there also be a training effort that is triggered by a specific call? That would be one suggestion. The other one would be something we I think discussed in the past. To some extent, it is a lot of effort to establish the brand of a doctoral network, and then after 4 years, the show is over and everything continues with something that is completely new. For many projects, that might be right, but I think there might be a way of doing more or benefiting more from the work that already goes in. That could take different forms. I also think the funding mechanism might stand in the way of some of your industrial doctorates or joint or multi-degree ideas. When I approached my own university about a dual degree program some years ago, and they learned that it's just for 1 year, they immediately said, we have no interest whatsoever because it takes 2 years to set it up. We need framework agreements for how these degrees are working. We would not do it for a single cohort. So either there could be a call for multi-cohort schemes, 10 fellows a year over 3 years. So something which is basically twice the budget of a normal network, call it network plus, super network, whatever. I guess there's some nice branding that could be put in place, but something which encourages partners to think more long-term and to also do the recruitment in a more strategic way. Either that, or why not look at the doctoral networks that are finishing in any given year and identify the 5% most successful ones by whatever KPIs you want to measure these and have a conversation with them. Would it not be useful to do it again? Because you did so great, you did well above everybody else. Why not give you a second cohort of students, maybe match funded, maybe whatever. I'm not saying I have the answer, but it feels a bit of a waste to put all of that effort into a project and then to just stop it at the end of the duration.
Thank you very much. Very interesting proposals, and indeed, I mean, it brings us back also to what Luca said. I mean, that the overall envelope that we will have a decisive element in deciding what can be done. You said, I mean, that you very much like the idea of being able to go up to 48 months in the number of months allocated for each individual fellowship. That obviously has a huge incidence on the budget. The proposal that you are making, Carsten, as well, on this continued funding, multi-cohort recruitments, securing funding a bit more in the long term. All this, I mean, that would once more have an incidence on the funding as well. But very interesting proposals indeed that we can look into. So thanks very much to the three of you. I would like to open the floor for feedback, questions, comments from the side of the audience. Yes, please. And for the benefit of the audience, maybe I could ask you to introduce yourselves very briefly, although most of you know you, but...
Hi, it's me again. I'm the Spanish National Counterpoint. I would like to launch a question or a comment. How you see the doctoral training in Europe related with defense? Now is a hot topic. Some of you are related with quantic matters. So how you see defense topic, dual use topics with the doctoral networks?
Anyone ready to take the question?
Yeah, I can maybe just give a few impressions from our community, the discussion in our community. So I think there are surely both views. Yeah, some are more reluctant, and others typically already are quite active in these areas, are much more in favor. So I think it's difficult to give just one answer there.
But I presume, I mean, that with the new framework program, there's going to be an opening towards more dual use projects. We will need to see, I mean, how it will come out at the end of the day. But what is not possible and fundable today might become possible and desirable even in the future with FP10. So let's see, I mean, what the politicians are going to decide. But yes, it's going to be a big question on the table. Luca?
Yeah, and maybe. I mean, of course, the programs are I can say, the instrument to implement policy. So, as Carl said, we have to see where the political masters wanted to go, and our challenge is going to be, to, from one hand, preserve the amazing and impressive impact that this program, these actions are already having, with the political needs. This is our job, actually, and we are always trying to match it. On the defense and dual use, we see every day what's happening in the outside world, and indeed, it is a fact that the next program maybe also, may have a strong defense angle.
Thank you very much. Yes, I see. Please.
I am Martino Flaherty from the Prinses Maxima Center in Utrecht in the Netherlands.
I just have a question. Thank you for the panel discussion. It's very interesting, and especially for Kirsten's viewpoint on when a network finishes, that it just doesn't float away into the ocean. But my question comes back to your viewpoint on the Seal of Excellence after a project is submitted, because I find the competition is exceptionally competitive, and you really need a score of almost 100% to get your project through. So we had been awarded a Seal of Excellence, but for us, it means nothing. You know, it's nice to have it, that we got recognized, okay, your project, we really highly value your project. But I really, for me at least, I would like to hear your viewpoint on awarding Seals of Excellence. Because in a lot of countries, you cannot apply for other funding. It's actually, yeah, for us, it's nice, but means really very little.
Yeah, I certainly agree with the challenges around extremely high evaluation marks. I mean, the moment you need 97, 98%, you can no longer expect that any panel can really distinguish between those marks in any level of granular detail. So it becomes, to some extent, a lottery where in very excellent proposals, there's just a certain number of projects that fit into the budget are being selected. And then I guess people need to try several times maybe before they are ultimately successful. Now, for the Seal of Excellence, I think that is still useful because there are now some political movements around the change of use of structural funds that are very difficult to commit for many countries and to move this into other areas, including research and training. So not now. I mean, we are in the same situation as you are, that the Seal of Excellence doesn't mean anything. It's maybe nice for a postdoc and their CV, but otherwise you can't translate that at the moment into funding. But I think here one has to recognize the funding is limited. So what do? Do you just tell people the score, or do you give them a little bit more? And in this sense, the Seal of Excellence is definitely an encouragement for the consortium that they had something which should be funded if there had been enough money, and that maybe in the future there might be ways of finding ways of funding more proposals than at the moment.
If I could just add on the Seal of Excellence. So far, I mean, for MSCA, we have had a Seal of Excellence, notably for what we call the mono-beneficiary actions. So actions where just one institution or one fellow applies, and that's for the postdoctoral fellowships. We have the Seal of Excellence. Okay, you are referring to your experience that you couldn't do much with it. I think that the experience, indeed, I mean, it might depend on the countries, but in some countries there is indeed good experience that rejected applicants because of lack of funding and not because of the quality of the proposal, that rejected applicants could indeed apply at national level or with other research and the organizations for funding based on the Seal of Excellence obtained for the postdoctoral fellowships. So in other countries, in other contexts, it might have worked. For the time being, for the doctoral networks, we are not basically awarding the Seal of Excellence. The main reason being that it's consortium-driven proposals, and obviously it would mean it's technically it's very difficult for a consortium to ask for money in I don't know how many different countries potentially, or to ask for money just in one country in order to get an international consortium funded. So there are difficulties linked to that, but maybe it's something that we can reflect upon for the doctoral networks as well for the future. Luca, you wanted to add?
No, I was just, I mean, we don't have the answer now, but I want to mitigate a bit of the frustration. It's too early to reply to you. So it's not, at the moment, what you're experimenting is happening. We awarded this Seal of Excellence because we wanted to show that there are a lot of excellent proposals that could not be funded. So in a way, we we put pressure and the ball on the other side. But we are at the beginning of the MFF discussion. So we're really at the beginning. And some instruments, again, the MSCA is very advanced, impressively advanced in the definition for the future. But other instruments, I'm thinking the competitiveness fund, the cohesion fund, the structural funds, we know that there may be a different approach in the next MFF. We have to see how they will look like, and our work will be to try to push synergies and to make visible that there are a lot of amazing projects that cannot be funded and could be should be considered with other instruments that can support.
If I may add to the discussion and complement, so a seal of excellence for a consortia. Yes, it is complicated. Actually, we have an example with the European Universities Alliances, where these are consortia, and we give them a seal of excellence. And indeed, I confirm what Klaus said, it's not easy. In some countries, they can co-finance also universities from other countries, but it's not something that is very common in many countries. Now, it links to the fact on what are the other sources of funding. And actually, we have a very good example with PF, with 4 countries that use the ERDF funding, so the structural funds, and they use that unspent budget to fund Seal of Excellence in MSCA and also in ERC. And that is something that is extremely powerful, because that means that they can build on the excellent evaluation done at EU level. They don't need to reorganize another selection. And it's a powerful way to use the budget wisely, powerfully, and with impact. And that is why, as Luca said, in the context of the next MFF, we could imagine, and though discussions in that direction, on how we could use the national and regional partnerships funding, which is the next phase of the structural funding, to use that budget, possibly, to fund consortia, like if we would imagine Seal of Excellence for DN, or individual fellowships. And it could be, possibly, if there is a wish to add additional funding in one area as compared to the other, that could be a nice complement to the bottom-up approach that is so successful in MSCA. So it's food for thought for the future. But thanks a lot for raising it.
Thank you. Thank you. Francesco Salese from Italy, professor in planetary geology. Looking towards the next FP10, should Doctoral Network be seen as a strategic European tool to protect and renew the public university as a place where independent long-term basic research can still be done? Because if we look to the US, for example, research is driven by private sector. Basic research. So in Copenhagen last December, to the second European Conference on Science Diplomacy, came out the question about the role of the universities and in the panorama. Okay, so what's your opinion about this topic?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm looking towards the panelists. Simon, maybe that's for you. Maybe you take
this seems to work. Yeah, yeah, good. I think it's a very good question, and I can only say when we asked our members where their funding is coming from in general, like for doctoral education, the private sector in Europe, unfortunately, range is quite low indeed, and that I think is a major difference. Especially, for instance, compared to the US. Yeah. So the private sector ranges below Horizon Europe, for instance. And we know Horizon Europe is only representing about less than 10% of the public funding in Europe. So that's how it is. But I think it makes it even more important than that we have a European program and that we have MSCA Doctoral Networks. And to fund this research, because we need, and we know also that from OECD data, that doctoral candidates, or rather doctorate holders, are doing very well on the labor market when it comes to employment rate, but also salaries. So the labor market situation looks good. So I think there is a huge advantage of investing in doctoral education in Europe in any case.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I very much share the same concerns that might be underpinning your question. And personally, I was very encouraged earlier on when we heard the presentation about the future, that bottom-up approach was in the center of everything. And that means the proposers have to justify the impact that their consortium and doctoral training program will have across many different dimensions, including, of course, generation of new knowledge. So I think this is all heading in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't think that there are any further questions from the audience. Maybe there is one. Yeah, maybe take one last question, a quick one.
Thank you. It's going to be quick. Well, my name is Monica, and I'm working at Eurofunding as project manager. And apart from being project manager in Marie Curie, I'm preparing proposals. So my question is about the European infrastructures, because it's true that it's not clear. I'm preparing Marie Curie Doctoral Networks, but also Cluster 6 proposals, where the topic says infrastructures are encouraged. So it's very nice if from Doctoral Networks, we can encourage them as well to participate, because it's true that it's something, there are facilities for everybody, but it's very blurry how you could connect with them. So there is anything in that direction.
Well, I guess it must be part of your narrative. When you ask me, and then of course I think I can sell our research. In order to do the best research, you always need 3 ingredients. One is you need universities, because you need academics who go crazy, who think beyond the state of the art, maybe 10, 20, 50 years. Some of our plans at the moment go beyond the end of this century. So by then I will not only be retired, I will no longer be around. So you need that as an ingredient to really drive innovation and new knowledge. Then you need large-scale research infrastructures, because they can provide access to technologies and just dimensions that no university, no single country often would have. So if you build that into your narrative, then that is the way how to approach the infrastructure, why you need them. And then certainly you need industry to pull the academics back to the ground, to make sure that the impact is not only in 100 years' time, but far sooner than that as well. And only if you have all 3 ingredients together, and you can replace research infrastructure with clinical infrastructures for medical applications. But basically, my view is, unless you have that sector split, you won't be able to do the very best research, because you will always be limited in one of the dimensions.
Thank you very much. Karsten, Vanessa?
Sorry to come in, I cannot resist. This is a topic that is close to my heart. I am really convinced that to build a strong Europe, we need more collaboration, not only by investing in researchers, but also by investing in this R&I ecosystem that we mentioned before. And I fully agree with you that sharing infrastructure is absolutely essential. I visited again Sweden 2 weeks ago with SciLab Lab. It's an excellent example where in Sweden, they've pulled resources together between all main universities, not only sharing infrastructure, but building new unique infrastructure, unique in Europe. And that is, in my view, the way to go, extrapolate it at European level. You mentioned creating synergies with European universities alliances. And yes, absolutely. And actually, we're very happy to see some of these alliances signing memorandum of agreement of understanding and sharing access to their infrastructure. because today we have not discussed it a lot, but there are budget restrictions, right? And it's more and more difficult for universities. And it's only by putting resources together, sharing access to equipment, maybe putting investment in joint infrastructure, that we will be able in Europe to stay competitive as compared to the rest of the world. I'm very happy to see some of you nodding, but actually it requires evolution in the mindset, because I'm very happy that we have people very open-minded in the room, but it's not the case everywhere. And it's not the case also when we discuss with member states in the research working party. So there is still a lot to do, but thanks to you, I'm sure we'll manage to get it there. And thanks to you too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vanessa. Today's event is part of the celebrations for the 30th anniversary of MSCA. And maybe from the three panelists, I mean, maybe one last statement from your side, one sentence. What are your birthday wishes for MSCA for the next decade and for the next 3 decades? What do you wish to the program in one sentence?
I wish that it stays a strong program as it is now, and with even more funding, of course.
Well, I think the best birthday wish was the one slide you showed earlier about the impact that the program has had on more than 150,000 lives over the 30 years. And that is such a remarkable impact that really cannot be topped by any other program that really focuses on people. So I definitely wish the program continued success, because these people will be the people that will make a difference for Europe for years to come.
I said already more money. No, for me, how can I say, the basic scenario, the minimum is that it stays as it is, and with the appropriate budget. But I wish, coming from innovation ecosystems, I wish the actions to be more integrated, more synergies with other instruments that I have seen, and not only in Horizon Europe, but also in other programs of the Commission. I think it can be really the next level of Marie Curie. We all know, and it's not a Marie Curie fault, but we all know that there is a big issue in Europe of knowledge valorization, knowledge transfer. It would be really nice to see this happening much more larger scale than now.
Thank you very much to the three of you for your birthday wishes, and thanks very much to the three of you for your insights, for having shared your views with us, for having answered the questions, and for having participated in the panel. I think you have given us a lot of food for thought for the present and for the future. And be reassured, I mean, everything that you have been saying has been recorded and noted down. Basically, it will be against the background of what you have been saying that we will have the working group discussions tomorrow morning. And in any event, our intention is basically to take the study report that has been presented to you this afternoon, to take it and to incorporate the findings and the recommendations coming from today's and tomorrow's meeting, and to incorporate it in this study report on the added value with the outlook for the future. So definitely what all the insights that you have been sharing with us will find their way in the final version of the study. So a big thanks to the three of you. And a big thanks as well to the audience for your attendance this afternoon. I've been living for 32 years in Brussels, and I've never experienced such a hot day. So it's really a coincidence. It's extremely hot, so I appreciate really, I mean, your attendance here this afternoon in the meeting. We look forward to having more discussions and more insightful discussions even with you during the working group discussions tomorrow. Just some housekeeping announcements from my side. We are serving now, right after the meeting, a networking cocktail with some food as well. And that is going to be served exactly in the same place where we had the coffee, so on the first floor. So that's for tonight. for tomorrow morning. We are offering you a welcome coffee with some croissants, I think, as well, at 8:30. And it's going to be served once more in this foyer place on the first floor. So you go there again. And then at 9 o'clock, we meet here in the plenary room. And from here, we will then go to the workshops. And then the work is going to start at 9 o'clock. So 8:30, the coffee, and at 9 o'clock here in the meeting room on the 13th floor. Okay, that was in terms of the housekeeping announcement. Thanks very much once more to the panelists, and maybe we can honor them with a round of applause from our side. Thanks to you from the audience, and I look forward to sharing a glass of champagne and some snacks together with you at the networking reception that we will have. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
My work is going to be